Notre Dame fans, welcome back to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. This is round two for some of you. And tonight we're going to talk recruiting. We're going to talk two positions tonight. We're going to talk linebacker, and then we're going to talk safety. And obviously last weekend and this upcoming weekend are two huge weekends for Notre Dame when it comes to recruiting both positions. And so we're going to dive into that. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to watch some film. We're going to update some recruiting, where things stand with certain players, and talk about what Notre Dame needs to do to finish this class out. And then, of course, this is going to be a podcast where I kind of do a lot of talking, the film evaluation, things like that. We'll answer questions at the end. If you have something you want to get in during the show, like during the early part, or a question that you feel you really want to get asked while we're doing that, just make sure that you hit the super chat, and I'll see that, and we'll get it in. Otherwise, we're going to rock and roll with some of this stuff. So I want to begin by talking about linebacker position. I have a podcast. I had an article today at irishbreakdown.com where I break down the potential linebacker class for Notre Dame in 2022. And it has a chance to be a big one. And it's important, number one, from a need standpoint. Notre Dame needed numbers in this class. They needed numbers of talented players in this class because of some misses in recruiting in past years. Obviously, Notre Dame completely struck out at linebacker in the 2020 class. Signed two linebackers in 2021, including one of the best players in the class, regardless of position, of Prince Colley. Kahanu Kia is more of a down-the-road guy. There's some boomer bust there a little bit. And you look at kind of how the position has kind of built out the last couple of years. There was a big need in this class to land number one, depth, number one, talent, impact talent, number two, depth, and number three, this was Marcus Freeman's first chance at kind of putting together a class that fit what he wanted to do. And that's the part that's really interesting about this. And you look at it and you say, first of all, there was already a linebacker committed in this class, and Nolan Ziegler. So you have to ask yourself, is Nolan really the kind of guy that Marcus Freeman is going to want in this class, or is this a guy that you're just talking about Notre Dame is honoring that commitment because he was already committed, which Notre Dame has done in the past? Well, then you look at his offer list and you look at the schools that were recruiting Nolan hard early on, and you'll find on that list was Cincinnati. So Cincinnati was pushing for Nolan early. They liked him a lot. They offered him very early in the process. And who was the person that made that offer? Marcus Freeman. So then you kind of do some research the first couple months that Marcus Freeman's on campus. You find out that is definitely a guy that Marcus Freeman has reiterated to, kind of, if you're building a class, this is a kid that we want. This is someone we want to be a part of this class. And so that's obviously, bam, check one. So then Marcus Freeman gets hired the first week of January. And you look at where the linebacker board was at the time. You had a player like Sebastian Cheeks, who Notre Dame had a good shot with early. But as I have been saying for a while, was a guy that just kind of felt like he was maybe looking for some other things. Sean Davis, who's from Chicago, had some comments on that in the earlier podcast. Sean's going to try to join us later. He's got a show that he's got to produce right now. If he gets done and we're still rocking and rolling, he's going to join us and talk a little bit about that as well. But you looked at it and you say, that there's a chance for a good linebacker class, but Notre Dame was probably second or third for Josh Burnham, and there just weren't a whole lot of linebackers offers out there. So Marcus Freeman came in, and there was really three priorities for him. If you just follow recruiting the last really 6 months since he got hired, and it's been now a little over 6 months since he got hired. I think he got hired like January 4th or 5th, somewhere around there. One of the first priorities for Marcus Freeman when he got hired was to push for Josh Burnham. He was a kid that was considered a Michigan lean early in the process. He grew up a Michigan fan. He was a guy that the Michigan staff wanted. Marcus Freeman got involved and was like, that's a kid that we want. Went after him hard and was able to get him within 2 months. March 17th, I believe, is when Josh committed to Notre Dame. So that was the first big domino to fall for Marcus Freeman. So you already have Nolan Ziegler in the class. You get Josh Burnham in the class. And that's an inside-out combination right away. And Ziegler being a safety rover type that could maybe grow into an inside player. And then you've got Burnham, who's a will that could maybe grow into a Mike, or eventually maybe a guy that can do some pass rushing in some situations where you get in some nickel situations. Not an every down pass rusher, not someone who's going to move to defensive end, but someone who has the skill set, the body type, the length, the burst, and all that could be a nickel type of sub package type of situation for him. And then almost immediately from getting hired, one of the early offers that he made, that Coach Freeman made, was to junior Tuihalamaka. And that was that kind of that number one Mike that Coach Freeman made an offer to. He was committed to USC at the time. Shortly after the Notre Dame offer, decommitted from USC, and Notre Dame immediately became the leader for him. Now, Oregon, Arizona State, Texas, a lot of schools jumped in the mix there. Notre Dame has kind of been in a good position this entire time, but more so, let's talk about the fit aspect of it. And that was the guy that you looked at and said, that's the Mike. That's the guy that Freeman wants as the Mike. And he never backed off that. And then you look at the other part is they're looking for a fourth linebacker. And early on, it kind of looked like maybe that might be Sebastian Cheeks. But on around January 18th, so almost 5 months ago, he offered Jalen Sneed from Hilton Head, South Carolina, top 100 recruit. And at the time, you're like, hey, you love the fact that we have a podcast back then. If you go find our podcast around this time, hey, I love the fact that they're taking a swing for a big-time player. I don't see Jalen Sneed picking Notre Dame. I don't think that's going to happen. That's the kind of kid that usually stays in the SEC. And lo and behold, within the next 2-3 months, you've got Jalen Sneed coming on campus for an unofficial visit, a self-guided tour. Notre Dame continues to push and push and push, and all of a sudden, Notre Dame is considered one of the schools to beat for him. And so now you look at it and say, okay, Notre Dame has some prioritizing they need to do. There's 3 linebackers left on the board, but only 2 that you can take. You can only take 2. And so they've kind of made the choice that they're zeroing in on 2 linebackers, and that is junior Tuihalamaka and Jalen Sneed. At the risk of, if you miss on them, you could end up coming up short. And so that's been kind of the strategy that Notre Dame has had at linebacker. So it goes 76 says, love the show. Hard to catch live. Wanted to stop in and drop a super chat. Keep it up. Go Irish. Appreciate you so much for doing that. Really appreciate the support of the show. Hopefully you're able to watch this one a little bit live, but I'm definitely glad you're able to check it out. And I really appreciate you being a part of this. Means a lot that you're able to take the time and to come in and obviously support us in this way. So really, really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. So then you get back. So let's look at the linebacker breakdown. So Notre Dame hosts junior Tuihalamaka this past weekend, knock it out of the park. The previous weekend, Jalen Sneed and junior Tuihalamaka were both on other visits. Tuihalamaka is at Texas. That's considered Notre Dame's top competition. Sneed is at Oregon. They're considered Notre Dame's competition. Both kind of come sort of back-to-back. Tuihalamaka was on campus this weekend. Jalen Sneed was at the Future 50 this weekend. Then he shows up on Monday. From all accounts, Notre Dame has knocked it out of the park with both. Now it's closing time. Now it's time to get him. Tuihalamaka is going to make his announcement on Saturday. Feel good about where Notre Dame stands with that one. Okay. Sneed has not set a commitment date. He may still end up visiting Tennessee, but I love where Notre Dame has put themselves. So now it's time to talk about what does this board in this class look like? What does this look like for Notre Dame? So first I'm going to begin by kind of talking about the things that I look for at linebacker, the traits that you look for. We talked about Rover the other day, and I would encourage you to go back and watch that video. I'm going to actually I think I uploaded that. I actually uploaded that on the YouTube channel. So if you didn't catch that whole mailbag, or you don't want to go through that whole 3-hour-long mailbag to find that one little clip where we talked about the Rover, I did take that part out. I uploaded it and made it its own video, so you can kind of break down of what they look for in a Rover. So we won't talk too much about that. We're going to talk about kind of the things that we look for when you look at an inside linebacker. Number one, you got to look for the frame. Number one, you want to look for a guy that's going to have some strength to him, some girth to him. Doesn't have to be 240, 250, but he's got to have some mass to him. Even if it's a 225, he's got to be a guy that can hold up and be strong. You look for length. You look for a stronger lower half. You look for a guy that's got some punch, very strong, violent hands, fast hands. A guy with the length is important because it's going to help with getting guys off your body, block destruction. You want someone who's got some toughness, some demeanor, some attitude. Athleticism, obviously, speed is nice. But there's 2 types of speed. Number one is that initial burst, that explosiveness, that first step, boom, get downhill. There are some guys that show that, but maybe don't show that second part of speed, which is more of the long speed, the second gear, to be able to pursue sideline to sideline. Those are things you look for. Other athletic traits that you have to have in a linebacker is foot quickness. And again, that's going to show itself in 2 different ways. Number one is just the normal step and go, that ability to explode downhill, ability to just plant and drive. The other part of that is sort of the agility aspect of foot quickness, which is sort of your change of direction. Being able to plant and move direction. So you're moving left, you plant, and you work right really quickly with a lot of suddenness, not a lot of tightness. And tightness is essentially when you hit that one foot and you're going to turn and go, can you hit it and go? Or do you kind of stay there? Or you kind of cemented there for a second before you can change directions? That is where the foot agility comes from, and that's part of that foot quickness. That also has to do with your hip tightness. Are you tight-hipped? Are you able to kind of open and run? Are you able to kind of plant and turn direction? All those things tie into it. Closing speed is the third aspect of speed that kind of ties into the first aspect. So it's more of that short area thing. Do you have that burst that you can explode to the ball carrier? You're kind of running along. You see the ball carrier. Do you have that gear to just really explode into somebody? Is there suddenness? Do you have balance? Balance is important because you're going to have guys kind of at your ankles and at your feet all the time. Guys trying to cut you. Do you have the balance to be able to stay up and keep working? Instincts are the next part. This comes down to play recognition. This comes down to locating the ball carrier while also seeing the blockers, or seeing the blockers while also locating the ball carrier. Being able to pick up players. So whether it's a puller, do you have the vision and the instincts to pick up a puller and then know how to attack it? Finding the football we talked about already. Being able to quickly engage, but also being able to keep your eyes and then know what to do. Just that ability to see it almost before it happens. It's an anticipation, not just a recognition. And that's going to be based on, number one, your instincts for the game. But then the other part is someone who puts in the work, somebody who studies, somebody who is going to spend the time saying, hey, look, when the left guard is this much closer and he's back off the ball, which you can tell from your linebacker spot, that's a tell for us that he's pulling. And so I may make a check, or I'll let the coach know, hey, look, when this guy lines up like this, we're seeing it. We saw it on film. We're seeing it now. We're recognizing that, making calls to the other players, things like that. Technique. I want a guy that's efficient with his technique, not a lot of wasted motion. Just everything is real quick and compact. We talked about the extension, being able to keep players off your body, whether it's going low for cut blocks, whether it's keeping guys off your body here. Part of that is understanding angles. So if I know that I have outside contain, I got to make sure that I'm protecting my outside. So you want to come at me on my inside, that's fine. We're going to stay engaged. I'm going to fight you, but my outside shoulder is clear because I got to get out there. I know that I cannot lose the outside contain. That's part of the technique aspect of it too. Then being able to disengage, that's called block destruction. So when you talk about what does it mean to be, for block destruction, it means, number one, it's not just keeping a guy off you. So if a guy's going to try to cut, block destruction, part of that is just taking them down and not letting them get into your legs. The other part of that is when you do engage, do you have the ability to get off that block quickly and get to the ball carrier? Those are things you look for. You want a guy that's going to stay square. You want a linebacker that just turns his hip and he's going to go. Right? You want a guy that can kind of move quickly while staying square line of scrimmage, because that's going to help you with your change of direction. And then obviously playing with good angles. You'd like to have someone that can be effective in the pass game, whether it's in zone coverage where, you look for someone who, again, understands how to play with good angles, someone who understands play recognition, run pass play recognition, someone who understands how to find routes, because look, you can just say, hey, look, you got a 45-degree angle and you got to get under the curl flat. Well, I can drop at a 45-degree angle. I know how to do that. But can I do that while also maintaining everything around me, finding that curl route, finding that in cut, whatever the case may be? Do I got to level out to get to that route? Do I kind of got to come a little bit higher to get to that route? Those are all things you look for. Drop quickness, reading the quarterback, being able to jump routes like a DB. So if you see an in cut coming, you got to have, you got to know how to play that angle to where you can kind of beat that guy to the ball. If you don't and you go too high, then you hit him, maybe he catches it, maybe he doesn't, or maybe you get there too early and you get called for a penalty. Whereas if you can beat him to a spot and understand that proper angles, that's where you can not only either just make the quarterback go somewhere else, or you can jump that route, get your hands on a ball, maybe turn it over, but at least knock it down. Those are things you look for. Also, the ability to change direction, and that comes into the things earlier. Do you have the foot quickness, the fluidity, which fluidities with your hips and your feet? Do you have instincts in coverage, those type of things? Do you have the speed to run with people, those types of things? And then who can you cover? Are you a guy that can cover backs and tight ends, or are you someone who can maybe cover, slot receivers and players like that? Those are things you look for. And then the other part of the pass game that you look for in a linebacker is, can he rush the quarterback? Whether it be as a blitzer or someone who can line up on the edge and just kind of come off the edge. Those are other things you look for. And then intangibles like production, injury history, consistency, motor, positional flexibility, things like that are all part of the grade that you look for in a linebacker. So those are the things that I look for in a linebacker. And again, the more areas where a guy grades out higher, the better player he's going to be, the higher he's going to be. And that's kind of what you're looking for. So let's dive into some film. Okay. And then again, we'll get to some questions later, and I want to start with first Notre Dame's 2 committed players, and we're going to talk about what I like from each one of those players. And we're going to start with the player that was first committed to Notre Dame, and that is Nolan Ziegler. So let's start off with Nolan. We're going to watch some film, talk about what I like about him, why I'm so much higher on him. When I first graded him, I gave him a 4-star grade, kind of a top 250 caliber player, top 250 to 300 caliber player. This was off sophomore film, but I had him as a 4-star. He was a consensus 3-star by everybody else at the time. Now, after his junior year, everybody's on board with him being a 4-star player. Now I think he's going to continue to see his stock go higher and higher and higher. He was recently named an all-conference player in lacrosse. I had a chance to view some of his lacrosse film this year. It was impressive. He's definitely filling out his frame. He's looking more and more like a guy that's going to be playing in the box, whether it be at rover or inside linebacker. Really, really impressed with what we saw from Nolan Ziegler. So I'm very excited to see that second-year growth, because that's really the thing that you look for. But this is a young man that makes a lot of plays on both sides of the ball. So we're going to get to what he does this year. He's a very, very talented player. Led his team to a state. I can't remember if they won the state championship. I know they played in the state championship, but I can't remember if they won or not. So let's pull up this film and watch a little bit of Nolan Ziegler's film. So I just figured I'd let y'all get a look at that first before we get to the actual film. That looks pretty good. So the first thing you're going to see about Nolan from film is he is going to play a lot in space. You can see the length, very tall, long kid. And from having seen him this spring playing lacrosse, he's definitely filling out his frame a little bit. He's a very loose athlete. That's the thing. He's very bouncy. He's a guy that's very light on his feet, changes his direction with ease, very nimble. You see that right there. See how he's kind of working? Keeps his shoulders square, never turns, keeps his feet moving, beats that defender or that blocker to the spot, knows he's got to stay outside, does a great job staying outside, gets some help from his teammates to spill, and he's there to clean it up for the big play. Really impressive there by Nolan. Look how long his arms are. He's in his stance right there, and his hands are almost to his knees, and he's not even bent over that much. Very long athlete. And this is something that you're going to see from Nolan. He's got to get stronger, right? This is a junior in high school that at the time was barely over 200 pounds, but he plays physical. He plays like a bigger guy. And so once that weight room strength comes, once that filling out time comes, you're going to see a guy that comes with a lot of force. This is a big running back right here. Look how that kid's about as big as he is, and he just rocks them. That's an impressive play. Very impressive play. See the little Jalen Smith bowl thing there? I got to love that. It's good patience there. Staying outside. No, you got to stay outside, but then also having the instinct to see that cut happening inside and quickly get inside of the hole. That's a good play right there. We're going to get past the kickoff stuff. It's a good fill here. You see how quickly he sees this. He's outside the box. He sees the inside run, and he quickly gets inside. You see how nimble he is on his feet? Just very light athlete on his feet. I really like what I see from Nolan athletically. We'll get past the kickoff stuff. You're just showing your speed there. Very loose athlete. You can see there's still some room for technique. He just kind of plants and takes the block. There's times when it will explode better than this. He's got really strong hips. He just has to learn to better utilize it. Here he is out on the perimeter like this. You can see him. You can see his ability to run, find the route, and play the ball. See, this is actually a really good play. People talk about, oh, you got to find the ball. You got to find the ball. I'm not worried about finding the ball. Not on a route like this. To be able to see the route, and he's looking right at the receiver's eyes. He's got a tremendous length. You're not throwing that ball over him. The only good thing that can happen for the offense on this play is that Nolan's too aggressive and he pass interferes. But as soon as the receiver puts his hands up, Nolan's hands go up, and he breaks up the pass. That's a really, really good play there. I believe this is the state championship game right here. This is him as a receiver. You can see the feet, see the athleticism. He's a very talented athlete. You can really see his coordination. You can see his foot quickness, things like that. Watching him on the lacrosse field this year. That's why I like watching guys that play basketball, guys that play baseball, maybe guys that linemen that wrestle. guys like this that play lacrosse, you can really see some of those foot quickness and agility, and that's good closing speed. Want to see him wrap up a little bit, but you see a good closing speed, good redirection. He moves in like 4 different directions on that play. There's a goal line play. I like this play. That you can see his instincts there, patience, and just a really long athlete. Baits this quarterback into this throw. Watch this. He's got the eyes on the quarterback the whole time. He stays behind, lets the quarterback think he's got me. And as soon as the quarterback cocks his arm back to throw it, you can watch it. As soon as he cocks back to throw it, Nolan's jumping underneath the route, picks it off. It's a really smart, heady football play. Some physicality there, that toughness that we talked about. Easy, nice, loose hips, good closing speed, gets downhill quickly. It's a really impressive football player. Really not light on his feet. See the redirection there. That's not very nice. It's kind of hard to see because of the way that they stop it, but you can see he's able to quickly open up his hips. He's got really loose hips, really fluid hips. He doesn't have hip tightness at all. Really like that. Gets in his drop, keeps his eyes downhill, gets underneath that route. He loses it though, right? So this is one of those ones where this isn't really a highlight for me. He loses that route. He starts getting a little peaky into the backfield right here, right? So he's reading the quarterback, not getting his depth. He needs to keep working and getting up underneath this, but you can see the athleticism on this particular play. He played a lot more like this as a sophomore. All over that receiver. Again, on that particular play, you can really see the foot quickness, which I really like about him. Here you see his lane. He's a long strider. You can see it right there. Good body control. Makes this catch for a touchdown. And see the block. And let's get to some football stuff. Here we go. See those long strides. Doesn't really take off until the end, but once he does, he just blows past people. Let's get a couple more clips on defense. That's what I like right there. That short air. Look how quick, light he is on his feet. Hop, hop, hop. Crosses over a little bit. I don't want to see a crossover, but you get that hop in there and just bam, explodes down to the ball carrier. Look how low he gets. This kid's 6'4". Look how low he gets, and then bam, just drives his hip through contact. I really like that. That's one of those things I like to see. It's a really good play. Light on his feet. Closes quickly, gets outside, covers a lot of ground. So, like, there's nothing that just blows you away about this play, but I just want you to watch his feet. Okay, just watch his feet on this play. Okay, he's just so nimble. He's just so light on his feet. Again, this isn't a blow you away. Boy, that guy needs to be ranked in the top 100 kind of thing. But you just see the athleticism. You just see the foot quickness, just the balance, just the really easy athleticism that he has. I really like that play. And then we'll get to one more, and then we're going to move on to Notre Dame's next commitment. I'm going to talk about the ability to flip his hips. This is an example I'm talking about. Watch. It's just really easy. And that's the thing I think that some people miss about Nolan is he's not a super twitchy player in how he looks, right? He's got really good quickness. I think he's a twitchy athlete, but he's so long and he's so smooth that I think it masks just how efficient and really agile and quick and fast he is. Because he's just a really smooth, natural athlete. Okay, so that is Nolan Ziegler. That is Notre Dame's first commitment in the 2022 class at linebacker. And he was one of their, I think he was their second or third overall commitment. Joey Tanona was the first commitment in that class, and Nolan Ziegler was next. And so next I want to talk about Josh Burnham. Now, this was an interesting recruitment because when Josh first was on Marcus Freeman's radar, Notre Dame was clearly number 2. He had come up with a final 3 of Notre Dame, Michigan, in Wisconsin, and everybody thought, especially all the Michigan people, they all thought he was going to end up at Michigan because that was the school that was considered sort of his childhood school and in-state school and all those kind of things. And a couple things played out in Notre Dame's favor. The first was The first thing that played out in Notre Dame's favor was the fact that Michigan had some turnover on their defensive staff. That definitely helped Notre Dame. No question about it. That helped Notre Dame. But the other part of that, too, is Marcus Freeman and the relationship Marcus Freeman was able to quickly establish with Josh Burnham and be able to let him know just how much Notre Dame wanted him in this class. And he was able to take Notre Dame from second or third for Josh to clear number one in a hurry. And part of it was finding what does Josh Burnham want to hear. And I don't mean that from the standpoint of like being dishonest with him or whatever, but different things are important to different recruits, and finding out what are the things that matter to you and showing you how your program fits those things that you're looking for. That's what I'm referring to. Not any kind of like, well, what does he want to hear? And then you tell him what he wants to hear, even if it's not true. It's more about finding out what's important to him and showing him how that fits into what Notre Dame does. So let's watch some film of Josh Burnham here. There might be some sound at the beginning if I remember correctly. I'll try to mute that right away. Yep. Okay. So this is Josh Burnham. Let's watch a little bit of this. I really, really like what this kid brings to the table. And the first thing you're going to see from Josh Burnham is great size. He's about 6'4", and he's a guy that is long. You saw the pictures when he was Marcus Freeman and Junior Tuihalamaka, just how long he is. Here's the other thing you see. Again, 6'4". He's probably about 210, 215 here, but he's up to over 220 now from what I'm told. Look how loose he is on his feet, how light he is on his feet for such a big kid. And watch this short area power. You don't see linebackers that very often go from basically nothing here, right? Like no forward momentum. He's not coming downhill. And then you watch him just shock a guy. That is powerful. That is a kid that's got very explosive hips. It's very impressive stuff. And if you really want to see Josh's athleticism, what you do is you go watch him play basketball. So he's light on his feet. Look at his patience here he shows. So he's right. I don't know if you can see it. He's the near side, in the bottom inside linebacker. See him light on his feet, waits for the run to declare, and then just explodes to the ball carrier for a tackle for loss. It's a really, really athletic kid. He just arrives with force, and he's not even like really – when I say not going hard, I don't mean he's not trying hard. I just mean he's not running full speed. But he arrives with force. Really, really impressed by that. This is the instincts. Reads the quarterback, gets his drop, gets up underneath that route, picks the quarterback off. It's just a really good play, and then you can see the athleticism there. And where you're going to really see like the speed and the agility and things like that, you especially see it on offense, and we'll get to that here in a little bit. But just look at that. This is what I'm talking about. Just shuffle, light on his feet, very nimble, and then just explodes. Explodes downhill and makes that play. Really impressive. Bam. Gets to it. Explodes. Really like this kid. Here you see his range. Just covers ground in a hurry and just, again, arrives with a lot of force. Really like this kid. And he's the thing, too, about Josh is he's a really – he's kind of a raw athlete from a technical standpoint. Here's another big play. He's got a lot of things he's got to work on, but he's got a natural feel for the game. Like you see him here. He's about 6'4", plays with a really nice base, stays skinny, gets through the traffic, plays with a good angle, and then bam, just blows the play up. And the thing about Josh is he's big and strong enough to play Mike, but he's athletic enough and good enough in coverage that he can play Will. He could even play sort of that strong side linebacker when they go to a 3-down look, and it's kind of a rover. I'll show that here in a little bit. Now let's see some offense. I'm just going to let this play, and you're going to really see the athleticism that Josh Burnham brings to the table. I think the other thing you're going to see is, being a quarterback, this kid's got some leadership. This kid's got some understanding and feel for the game. That was a heck of a run right there. This is a kid who's about 6'4", 215 or so pounds at the time, moving this easily, this kind of explosiveness. This is a linebacker, people. This is what I mean, this kid's really impressive. Really impressive. And when I talk about balance, this is kind of one of the things I'm talking about. Balance for anybody is just the ability to kind of take hits and just keep your feet moving, not get knocked off course. Yeah, gets kind of yanked there and doesn't throw him off, doesn't stumble. Somebody yanks me like that, and I'm just walking, and I'm probably falling down, But for Josh, he just keeps going, keeps his balance, keeps his feet moving. Really impressive athleticism. Just so light on his feet. Very powerful athlete. He's a really impressive. I mean, Josh grades out to me. Nolan Ziegler grades out as a top 200 player because he's got some size he's got to fill into, and there's some technical parts of his game that need work and those type of things. Josh graded out as a top 100 recruit for me, and very clear top 100 recruit. There aren't many players that combine this level of athleticism and size and instincts and a guy that isn't even close yet to his full potential. That's a nice cut right there. Watch this change the direction. Boom, just bounces it outside quickly and immediately. So when I talk about acceleration, this is what I'm talking about. Watch out of this cut. So once he's going downhill, he makes that inside cut there off his right foot and just jumps outside. But watch how quickly he gets back to full speed. Bam. And he's just immediately back to full stride and he gets outside the defense. That is really impressive. That's the acceleration. When I break down film and I talk about, acceleration, that's the kind of acceleration that matters for a linebacker. Can you plant and just immediately get back to full speed in an opposite direction? That's what separates the good linebackers from the great linebackers. And that's one of those things you see from Josh Burnham on film that makes you say, hey, this is a kid that to me has big-time talent and big-time potential. And that's the reason that Josh Burnham grades out so high for me. He is, of the 4 linebackers we're going to talk about here today, he grades out the highest for me. Now, I think Jalen Sneed might have a higher ceiling, but that's debatable. Josh Burnham is my number 1 linebacker in this class. No matter who else Notre Dame signs that they're talking to, he'll barring somebody just taking a major jump as a senior, which could happen, right? I mean, Nolan Ziegler could end up as the number 1 linebacker in this class, and junior Tuihalamaka could. Jalen Sneed could if they join the class. But Josh Burnham right now to me is just that combination of size, athleticism, instincts, playmaking ability, versatility. He's a kid that can play Will, he can play Mike, he can play sort of a strong side backer if Notre Dame were to go to that. He's a guy that I think has the ability in time to develop into maybe a 240-pound edge rusher in some nickel situations. He's got a lot of versatility, and that's the thing that when I look at Josh Burnham just really stands out to me. He has got the total package, and he's not close to being the full player that I believe he's going to be. So that's Josh Burnham. The next player I want to talk about is junior Tuihalamaka. He is from Mission Hills, California, plays at Bishop Alamany High School. Junior is a very, very interesting player. Very interesting player. Listed around 6'2", is over 230 pounds, big, thick kid, big, strong kid. He is a pure Mike linebacker. He is a pure put him in the middle of the defense and just let him play slot to slot. He's going to clean up the run game. That's what he's going to do. Bring some zone drop ability to the table, can line up and rush the quarterback. We're going to watch some of his sophomore and junior film. But he's a guy, it was really interesting to see how his recruitment went down. Notre Dame wasn't even on his radar. They hadn't offered him. The previous staff hadn't offered him. Marcus Freeman comes in, and as soon as he offers him, bam, there's immediate interest there. Stanford was another offer that came for junior that was sort of a needle mover for him, which I think tells you kind of what he's looking for. It's not just football, but this is a kid that understands, I want to go somewhere and get a tremendous degree as well as getting coached up. So I think those are the things that stand out when I look at junior Tuihalamaka. He's a guy that brings a lot of power football to the game. And as I've said many times in the last couple months, I think that position is going to have a comeback here, and we'll get into that here at some point in time this summer. But this is a young man that, for me, that I said is a pure Mike linebacker. We're going to pull his film up now and watch some of his junior and senior film, or sophomore and junior film, and we're going to break down kind of what we see from him. So the first thing that I want to talk about with junior when I watch him, and we're going to talk first. We're first going to look at his sophomore film. So this is the first film that I saw from him. What you're going to see is he's a different kind of athlete. He's a big power guy, and he's a guy that reminds. I hate saying this because I feel like I'm putting the pressure on the kid, but I don't mean to say he's going to be a future Heisman runner-up like Manti Te'o, but body type, skill set. I think Manti was a better athlete, but I think this kid is in a lot of other ways plays the same exact position, that plays the position the same way that Manti does, meaning instincts, power, getting downhill, things like that. And there's a lot of things about his game that I think need to get cleaned up as well as he continues to evolve. So let's watch a little bit of Junior's film here. This is sophomore film. And again, you're going to see a guy that is a big downhill missile. Big, strong kid. And he's pretty light on his feet. He's not an explosive athlete, but he's very light on his feet. Covers good ground there. See him wearing number 44. I want you to remember that here and when we get to his junior film. Light on his feet. See that? Pretty good change of direction. But he's a really instinctive player too. He's got good timing on his blitzes. This is one example. You're going to see it in other times. On his game film, you see it even more. But a guy that really times things up correctly, gets downhill, gets through that hole really quickly. And his ability to get skinny for a guy that's just not skinny is impressive as well. He's a very powerful player, very strong hands. His block destruction is good. I think at times he plays too high. I saw that in some film as his junior. I thought at times he kind of played too high, which caused him to get stiff. But as a junior, you see plays like that play right there. Watch this. It's sudden. It happens quickly, so you may not see it. But watch this when he's going in one direction, and he quickly plants and moves to another. So you see that? Bam. See that little quick right before he gets through the hole? Like that's the kind of thing I like to see. And then he hits again, and he's able to get to the running back in pursuit. That's a really good play right there. Again, he's not going to win foot races against the other linebackers, but he's very smooth and fluid. And you're not asking him to do that. You're asking him to play in the box. You're asking him to shut down the run game, basically from tight end to tight end. That's what you're going to ask Junior to do. If you're a team that's going to put him in the slot and ask him to cover people or ask him to run 30, 40 yards at a time and make plays, then you're just not doing a good job of using his skill set. And that's not something you necessarily ask Manti Te'o to do either. You know what his game is, and you find it. This is a nice job of looking up this route. Again, is he super rangy? No. But he gets into his drop, gets good depth, looks the route up, finds it, and then gets his eyes back to the quarterback and gets his hands on the football. And those are the things I like to see from him. This is another play where it's really sudden. You don't see it. It happens quickly, but watch this change of direction. He quickly works to his left, and then boom, explodes and gets back to his right and makes a play on the football. Really like Junior. And this is the thing I say, like this right here, this is good. He's got a good base, sinks his hips, plays low, takes on a pretty big offensive lineman. You look at the level of competition he plays, he's playing future D1 and 1AA offensive linemen a lot of times. He stays low. I didn't see this as much as a junior. I thought he played a little bit high as a junior. That's something that I would definitely want him to work on. Sees on his feet, sees the run, gets downhill, makes the play. Those are those instincts I'm talking about. Bam. I love it. You can just see, just watch him. He knows where the ball is going too. He just knows. He's just waiting on the ball to get snapped so he can slant inside and just blow it up. It's a really impressive play by Junior right there. He's a very smart and instinctive player as well. Plays with a lot of fire. Boom. Takes on the ball carrier, gets through the hole. It's a really impressive play. Time's up again. Now, look, this is a big point that he's taking on here, this offensive lineman. He just blows him up. This is a big kid. Just boom, runs him over. Plays with a lot of power. Again, is he going to win a lot of foot races? I think that's the same play from earlier, from a different angle. Not going to win a lot of foot races. He's kind of smooth. Gets underneath it, reads the quarterback, finds the route, then finds the quarterback, and is able to make the play. He's a little high here, and you can kind of see at times he'll get high, and you can see that right here. Plays a little high, but gets across the wash, able to close on the ball carrier, and once he gets his paws on you, you're going down. There's no doubt about it. That's that same play from a different angle. Like I said, not an explosive athlete, but a guy that has good foot agility, good quickness and balance, and I do like that. And get to some junior film here. So I want you to notice something, right? What number did we just see him wearing? Number 44, right? Watch what he's wearing as a junior. I don't think this is a coincidence. This is now junior film from this spring. You can get a chance to see his number in a second. You just see the foot quickness, working across the trash, finding a hole, stepping into the hole. Can you see the number yet? He's wearing number 5. I don't think that's a coincidence. Little block kick. I think the thing you'll notice from his junior film is, like I said, he was playing a little bit higher than he was before, but you can see the instincts, you can see the range, you can see the strength. Stays light on his feet there. Again, gets into the hole. Now, here's some things. If I'm Notre Dame, here's some things I'm working on when I get junior. Number one, I want to reshape his body a little bit. I want to get rid of a little bit of weight, then add some weight. So I think he's a guy that's going to end up being 245, maybe even 250 like Manti was. But I would probably this summer, not this offseason, I would probably say, hey, I want you to lose 10 pounds. And here's how I want you to lose the 10 pounds. And then get him back up. Because I do think his body weight needs to be redistributed just a little bit differently. And say, like, you've seen him just playing a little bit higher here as a junior. And that's the thing that I saw is I thought he freelanced a little bit too much as a junior. I thought he was moving around more. As you can see here, they had him playing outside the box. And I think he did some good things, but I think he lost kind of what made him sort of that really dominant Mike linebacker. And again, those are things that are all correctable, and you've seen him do those things on film, and those are the things I like from him. But I would definitely want to work on that. And then the other thing I would want to work on is he's got we talked about the weight. We talked about maybe playing a little bit more structured. I want to see him playing with a consistently better base. You see, that's a good base right there. But then you saw some times against Chaminade where he was playing a little bit too high, lost his base, and I think that takes him away from being able to play with some of the suddenness and things that you look for in a linebacker. Good timing there on that blitz. Stays outside. Gets off the block when the guy gets outside. There you see that power. But again, even there, like that play right there, he's high. He's playing too high. You see the power, but he's high, right? So when he hits the guy, he kind of has to stop. As a sophomore, you saw him play lower, play with a better base. And so again, when I'm a linebackers coach, am I worried about this? No, I'm not worried about that because, to me, you look at him and say, these are all correctable things. These are all things that you can work on, things that you can improve, and things that you get on there. What you can improve or what you can't necessarily improve as a guy has to have is the power that he has. You can't improve a guy that has the instincts that he brings to the game, a guy that has the playmaking ability that he brings to the game. Those are all the things you look for in junior Tuihalamaka. And so, yeah, there's some things he's going to have to clean up from his game. He's far from a finished product, but he's still the best pure Mike linebacker that I've seen in this class. And I think the junior season, I'm not reacting to too much. I've had some people that are just like losing their minds about it. And, rivals dropped him like 70 spots or whatever. I don't care about that stuff. What I look for, and I say, okay, has the skill set changed? No, the skill set hasn't changed. There's some technical bad habits he developed as a junior that I think got him in trouble. Somebody asked about the Chaminade game. I saw that game. I saw about quite a few clips from it. I didn't see the whole game. I've seen good clips of it, and he was playing out of position a lot. He was high. And when you play high, your feet start getting crossed up. You can't just plant and redirect. That was getting him out of position at times. It wasn't his best game. Then I've seen other games from his junior year in this spring where he looked like the junior Tuihalamaka that you saw last year. So I still see the skill set. Notre Dame has seen the film. They still love him. Because if you're Marcus Freeman, you say, there's some skills here that the skills are there. Great size, length, power. He's agile. He's pretty smooth guy. You just have to clean up. You have to reshape his body a little bit, and you have to clean up some of the technical things. Let's talk recruitment, okay? So Junior Tuihalamaka has been looking at a lot of different schools. He came down to a Final Five. I believe his Final Five was Oregon, Stanford, Arizona State, Texas, and Notre Dame. That was his Final Five. Stanford was considered a player earlier. I never bought that one. I felt for a long time it was a Notre Dame battle. The question is who was the other school that was going to get in the mix? And we started to tell you within the last couple months, Texas was that school. Texas gave Junior a lot to think about. You've got Steve Sarkisian taking over, who was at USC. Coach Sarkisian's got those West Coast connections. Obviously, coached at USC, played at BYU, coached at Washington, just coming off a national championship, and he was able to kind of impress people with, hey, look, we're trying to do something. And he understands all the talent that's out in California, and him and his staff have really made a hard effort to try to get out to California to get the players. And Junior was one of the players that Texas made an early priority. And they made a good push. They definitely gave him a lot to think about. He visited Texas not this past weekend, but the weekend before, the weekend of the 4th through the 5th, and went really well. From all accounts, it went really well. But I think we all have kind of seen where this one is headed for a while. He's going to make his announcement on Saturday. All I say is if I'm a Notre Dame fan, I would definitely be paying attention to his Twitter feed on Saturday. I would definitely be excited about that. And look, anything can happen, right? Anything can change, but I feel Notre Dame's in a good place there. And I think if you're able to get him, it gives you that pure Mike linebacker. And that's the thing that I like. But also a guy that, maybe can do some things off the edge. If he kind of outgrows the Mike linebacker position, he's kind of got the frame that you could say, okay, if he gets up to like 250, maybe he's not a Mike. Maybe you somebody else beats him out. Is this a kid that could go play some Viper and bring some skills to the table there? Yeah. So I do think he has a little bit of that type of potential. But when you look at it right now, there's a lot to like about Junior Tuihalamaka as a player, and a lot to like as a Notre Dame fan about where he stands right now with his recruiting standpoint. So I think he's a guy that Marcus Freeman has targeted from day one and has not changed his opinion at all. And look, since his junior year, if you're someone who's concerned about his junior year, I get it. Okay, I saw a couple things that were concerning. They didn't really bother me too much because they're all correctable, and that's important. Is this something that's did the guy did the guy get too big? Some guys peak as even a sophomore. Some guys peak athletically. Eventually, once you peak, you start to kind of come down a little bit. I didn't see any of that. What I saw was a player that kind of lost the base that he played with. His technique got him in trouble. Then once I see that, I'm good to go. But Notre Dame had every chance in the world to kind of back out and say, hey, look, we like a couple other guys better. They didn't do that. He's been Marcus Freeman's guy from day one, and nothing's changed that. And, I think that fit is going to end up paying off in the end. Apologies for the constant water breaks, but talked for 3 hours earlier. Been on the phone a lot today with family, working on some things. So throat's getting a little bit dry, so I apologize. But the other thing too, and somebody just kind of said it, I think there's another positive to taking Junior Tuihalamaka, and that is landing Junior Tuihalamaka. That's a big-time West Coast kid, and I would like to see Notre Dame getting back to some of those West Coast kids, getting those top players from the West. I think that would be important too, and he would certainly be that kind of guy. So let's talk about the fourth linebacker that's still left on the board, the player that I think Notre Dame would love to add to this class, and that is Jalen Sneed. Jalen Sneed's recruitment has been very interesting because he was not on Notre Dame's radar the day that Marcus Freeman got hired. It was nowhere on Notre Dame's radar. That was not a guy that Notre Dame was going to pursue, and I think there's a couple reasons for that. Number one, he is a South Carolina kid that you look at and say that's an SEC type of guy, right? Notre Dame didn't often get involved with those type of guys, especially a highly ranked guy. He's a top 100 recruit, consensus top 100 recruit. Notre Dame didn't often go after those guys under Coach Lee. And Coach Lee did a lot of great things, but that was just something he didn't do. The other thing is I don't know if Jalen fits his prototype body type that Coach Lee looks for. And I think that was another thing that was fact. Again, these are my opinions. No one's told me why they didn't go after him before. But I think that's part of it too, is why he wasn't on the radar. But he was within 2 weeks of Marcus Freeman being hired. This kid had an offer. And has been a guy that's been a priority recruit from Notre Dame from day one. And as we watch the film, I think you're going to see why. The one thing you're going to notice about Jalen Sneed, you're going to see some impressive things, but the one thing I think that I want you to look for and see if you agree or disagree with me on this, he is not even close to being a finished product. Now, that doesn't mean that he's not well coached and those type of things. It's just that he's moved around. He was a linebacker as a sophomore. They had to put him at D-end as a junior because that's where his need was. And so he's done a lot of different things. But when we're going to watch sophomore film as a linebacker and his D-end film, this kid is an exceptional, exceptional athlete. Very, very impressive young man. And we're going to get a chance to watch some of that stuff here now. So this is Jalen Sneed. Let's get rid of some of that music. Very long, despite not being real big and tall. He's like 6'1", 6'2". He's very long. 17 was his number as a sophomore. So this is going to be his sophomore linebacker film. What I like about that play, again, that's what he understands what he's got to do. What's his job? He's got to keep contained. He's got to stay outside. The thing you're going to notice about Jalen is he is an extremely explosive athlete. He can get downhill in an absolute hurry when he wants to, and he is a really explosive player. Gets through that hole in a hurry. Here he's on space. Just work. Look at him work through that block. And Christopher, we'll talk about his recruitment after we're done breaking down the film. We'll talk about where things stand. He is a very impressive athlete. Very light on his feet, closes on the route well. Very nimble athlete, very explosive. Again, this is sophomore film. Keep that in mind. This is when he was a sophomore in high school. We'll get to some of his junior film in a second. But the reason I'm showing this, I wanted to show him playing linebacker first. Look at that patience. And a lot of times when you have a guy that's an explosive athlete, he can be out of control. You know, he knows he's fast and he wants to just go. But you see here from Jalen, and you see this on many plays, he's poised, he's patient. He lets the play happen, stays outside, and then when he's ready to go get the ball, you see it now. There's the explosiveness right there. Watch this burst off the edge. There he is right there at the bottom of the screen. Watch this explosiveness. Okay, this tackle has no chance. Zero. Quarterback has no chance. And Christopher, I see people talking about people that have recently interviewed him and all this kind of stuff. We did a show at 1 o'clock this afternoon where we broke it down. So if you didn't watch the show today, you need to watch the show today because we talked about how the visit went and all that kind of stuff from our sources. So, like I said, it went really well. But we'll get to that here in a second. So this play coming up, the ball's not thrown at him. He's playing in the slot, and he's actually the guy that runs with this wheel route. You can see him in space. See that stride? Beats the guy to the spot. That's a really impressive athletic move there. Good contain, stays outside, and then just explodes and eats it up. It's a very, very impressive player. All right, now here's stuff from his junior year playing defensive end. He switched to number 3. Now, obviously, this is not the position he's going to play at Notre Dame, but the thing that impresses me is this is a kid that's only 210 pounds, and he's playing defensive end in high school because that's what his high school team needed him to do. But you see the explosiveness. You see the strength. You know, he's not a real big guy. He's like 210, 215 pounds, but you see the strength. He's a very powerful player. See that explosiveness just coming off the edge with force. See that first step burst. I mean, just beating guys off the ball, just beating guys to spots. These are some undersized linemen, have a little bit more athleticism than you think. He's just eating them up. I mean, just they can't block him off the line. He's a really, really impressive athlete. This is a really nice move around the edge here. You can watch him here. He's to the right, far bottom right of the screen. Just beats this tackle off the ball, explodes, and just eats that running back up. It's a really, really impressive athlete. Notre Dame is recruiting him right now to play rover. That is where I think he's going to begin. You see him on the backside here. Look at this pursuit. He's actually to the bottom. He beats the guy inside, then gets back outside to take him. It's an impressive play. But he's a kid that could play. He could play. This is him on offense. He could play rover, obviously. He could play Mike, I think, in time. I really do think he's going to be a 230-pound kid when it's all said and done. I think he can play Mike, and I definitely think he can play Will. I think ultimately Will's probably his best position, but I think he's a kid that can kind of play all over the field. I think that's how they're going to use him. So that's the film of Jalen Sneed. And here's what's going on with his recruitment. So if you didn't watch today's show at 3 o'clock or 1 o'clock, I'll tell you what I told you before. I tweeted it out this morning. Notre Dame absolutely crushed it with his visit. Crushed it. I've talked to multiple sources. I don't think it could have gone any better. I came into this visit more concerned about Oregon than I was 2 weeks ago. Talked to some sources before the Notre Dame visit before the Oregon visit, where they felt Notre Dame was the clear leader. After the Oregon visit, those same sources that had talked to him and people around him, there's a lot more concern from a Notre Dame side of things about how things would go. Notre Dame was going to have a great visit to be able to keep their pole position with him. And after the visit, like I said, the Notre Dame staff crushed it. He was on campus, just him and Tyson Ford. That was it, with the whole Notre Dame team, the whole Notre Dame coaching staff. And they made very clear what makes Notre Dame unique. What makes Notre Dame unique from an academic standpoint, from an athletic standpoint, from a branding standpoint, every single standpoint that just makes Notre Dame so unique. And they did a great job of getting to Jalen. I think they did a great job of showing him, this is really what Notre Dame is all about. This is what makes us unique. And he's a player to me that you just don't see Notre Dame get these kind of kids very often. South Carolina kid has a Bama offer, has all types of SEC offers. Oregon wants him. Grew up wanting to play for Oregon. And Marcus Freeman was able to quickly get Notre Dame from not even being on the radar to being able to get to the point where, they're in great shape. I mean, that's all I can say. They're in great shape. I like where Notre Dame stands. And I think that they're in a great position to sign, to eventually get commitments from, and then ultimately sign all four of the linebackers we talked about tonight. Now, got to let it play out, right, and give the kids their moment. But I really think this is something that we could see. This group could be to me, look, I'm just going to say it, okay? I'm trying to be reserved. This could be the best linebacker class that Notre Dame has had in 2 decades. I mean, just simple as that. It has a chance to be a very special group. And it's special for a couple reasons. Number one, recruiting rankings wise, obviously, there's no Jalen Smith in this group, but 2, 3, 4 are all guys that are top 100 potential players. Even Nolan Ziegler, who's a little further behind now because of just the body development. To me, he has the upside of a top 100 player. He has the talent of a top 100 player. Josh Burnham's a top 100 recruit. Jalen Sneed's a consensus top 100 recruit already. He clearly has top 100 talent. He's done a great job at recent events. I got some clips today from Zach Goodall, who runs the Florida site for SI. He sent me a couple clips of him in pass coverage. That was the one thing I just hadn't seen Jalen do a lot of, was pass coverage. Loved his change of direction and those type of things. Think he's got the potential to be a really good cover player in time. The other part that I like is that you can use these guys together. That's the important thing. If you sign 4 great linebackers who can only play 2 positions, you're going to be a little bit limited on the impact that they can have together as a group. What I like about this group is the way that Notre Dame plays its defense, you can use these guys together, not just in a situation where they're on the field as part of a rotation, 4 guys for 3 spots or 4 guys for 2 spots, there's situations where you can use these four together. And I'm just going to show you a couple examples of just from some still clips of Cincinnati that I think are examples of what I'm talking about here. Let me just get these things kind of queued up here real quick, so we can show you what I'm talking about here. So just things that if you watch Marcus Freeman play, if you watch him when how he coaches and the different things he's done as a coach, I think what you're going to see is a guy that understands, hey, I can use all types of different skill sets together, and he's going to recruit all types of different skill sets together. And those are things that I really like about him. So the first thing I'm going to show you is some clips from the Cincinnati Georgia game. Both of these clips are going to be from the Cincinnati Georgia game. And the reason for it is I want to show this is a thing where you're going to see Cincinnati played so many games against teams that were spread teams and AAC teams that you kind of say, okay, well, how's that going to work against Stanford and Wisconsin and Bama and schools like that? And so these are the things that I want to show. So this first one right here, okay, this is a clip from the Georgia. This is actually one of the first plays of the Georgia game, and this is basically a 4-3 alignment. Okay, now in this 4-3 alignment, the reason I'm showing this is a true 4-3. So instead of the past where you'd kind of have that in the slot, you'd have like a rover or somebody like that. Here, it is a safety. It is a true safety. Okay, and then you've got the three true linebackers on the field together. So you see that. You see a true Sam linebacker, a true Mike linebacker, and a true Will linebacker. Okay, and then the other parts of the game, they were in more of their 3-3-5 look. Okay, now here's the part that I want to talk about as far as how these guys can play together. So this is a different personnel. The Mike and the Will are the same. So that's the top two linebackers. Those are the same. But the third linebacker down at the bottom, that is more of their rover linebacker. Okay. And then you see the NK, that stands for nickel. Then you see two safeties and two corners. Now, the first thing that Notre Dame can do is you have three spots there that are right now linebackers. Okay. You have four players that can play those three spots. I think if you look at the three linebackers, the one on the bottom, that is a spot that Nolan Ziegler and Jalen Sneed can play. Then you see the next guy in between the two linebacker spots. That's the Mike linebacker. Okay. That's a spot that I think Josh Burnham and Junior Tuihalamaka can play. And I also think in times Jalen Sneed could potentially play that, but that's not ideally where you're going to play him. But Burnham and Tuihalamaka can both play that position. Then the third linebacker on the top of the screen, that's the Will linebacker. That is a position that Burnham and Sneed can both play, and potentially in time, Nolan Ziegler could play. Then you throw in Prince Colley into this conversation. Prince Colley can play the top and bottom linebackers as well. So you have five guys who can play three spots. Here's where it gets a little bit more unique. So when you look at a guy like Ziegler, you look at a guy like Prince Colley, those two guys also can play what I believe can play the nickel position. And so instead of being a 3-3-5 out of 3-3-5 personnel, meaning 3 D linemen, 3 linebackers, 5 DBs, I believe Notre Dame can have the athleticism, and I believe that Marcus Freeman is recruiting the athleticism to the point where they can play a 3-3-5 alignment out of 3-4 personnel, meaning 4 linebackers on the field. So obviously you have the 3 linebackers, and so then that rover, it could be a rover position, but you could also have a Sam linebacker to where now it's, you could have Sneed at that third linebacker spot, you could have Tuihalamaka at the Mike, and Burnham at the Will. But then instead of having a nickel on the field, you could potentially have Prince Colley or Nolan Ziegler. You could also maybe have Jalen Sneed there. In sort, if he has the coverage instincts that Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah had, for example. So right there's a potential, depending on the athleticism you have, and then the type of offense that you're going to face, especially if it's a team that throws a lot of quick game, a team that likes to run the ball out of the spread, like a North Carolina. Those are times when you can see 4 linebackers on the field at the same time. But you can only do that if you have guys like Ziegler, Sneed, and Prince Colley, who are the elite type of athletes that can play in space the way that you need that kind of player to play in space. And so when I talk about you've landed talented players, that's all fine and dandy. But if those talented players can only play 2 spots, then you're gonna be in trouble. So I think those are the things that you look at and say, that's why I think those guys can play together. Okay. And that's where I say this is a group that adds impact to how good this linebacker class could be. Now the next key is going to be going out and being able to add those guys in a class together. So before we move on to the safety breakdown, I'm going to go through the questions and see if we have some linebacker questions, and we'll work through those before we move on to safety. All right, and it looks like you guys had too many comments and questions, and it looks like the questions that I had at the very beginning are not there. So let me see if I can get them on the YouTube channel. Let's see if they are still there. The last question that I see is about someone who wears yeah, we're not going to get into that. All right, let's see here. Colt Sear, this is, I guess, some conversation about Marcus Freeman. Coleman Smith asked, Brian, do you believe Burnham, if you had a question before this that I didn't get to, please put it in there. As I said, sometimes StreamYard does not allow us to go all the way back to the early questions. So we'll kind of look at that. But Coleman asks, Brian, do you believe Burnham is the most versatile linebacker, the most versatile defensive recruit? I believe so. I think he's certainly, Coleman, I think he's certainly the most versatile of the front seven recruits. I definitely believe that. I think he's the most versatile of those players. I think he's the most versatile in regards to, I think he could play, honestly, could play three linebacker spots. I think he could grow into a Viper in time, those type of things. So I certainly believe he's the most versatile from that standpoint. I don't think he's necessarily the most versatile overall, just because I think his versatility is kind of limited to the second level, first and second level. And I think there are other guys like, that you could look at and say, Nolan Ziegler, you could argue, is just as versatile, if not more so, because I think there's a chance that Nolan Ziegler could play safety at Notre Dame. I don't think he's a safety. He's not quite as athletic as Kyle Hamilton, for example. I think he's more of a second level player, but he's got a much better shot at playing on two levels than the second and third level than Josh Burnham does. But they're all versatile. I think Jalen Sneed's very versatile. So there's a lot of versatility there. Ronald, thank you so much for the super chat, Ronald. I appreciate that very, very much. I'm glad you're still awake and have all the energy. No, you're having some long days. So I appreciate you being with us for both of these shows, buddy. I appreciate that very much. Let's see if we got some more questions. So Coleman, I hope that answers your film. Mason says Burnham's film speaks for itself. It absolutely does. Coleman Smith, when we were going through the Burnham film, also mentioned that Burnham looks a lot like Taysom Hill on offense, and I agree. I mean, he's a really impressive athlete. Matt D says seeing Burnham's athleticism is exciting. It absolutely is. Thomas Walsh says Burnham will get to 250 and dominate by his junior year. I think he could get to 250, but I don't think they'll push him to that. I think what I'd rather see them do is kind of streamline him at like 230, 235 and just keep him being explosive. I don't think he needs to get to 250, but does he have the kind of body that could get to 250? Absolutely. We have a recruiting question. Matt asked if he could confirm that Junior has set his commitment date for Saturday. That is confirmed. There's no question about it. Let's see if we get some more questions here before we can get caught up with everybody is at. So S brought up the Chaminade game, and again, I saw that film and it was not impressive, but I don't get too wrapped up into one bad game. I've seen plenty of other games and clips where he has been very impressive. I think those were issues to me were more technical issues than they were talent issues, in my opinion. All right, Christopher DeCant, you said you have your doubts, Christopher. I did not see what that was referring to, so if you don't mind following up and let me know what you were talking about. But Matt D says if Notre Dame gets Sneed and Tuihalamaka, they will be done at linebacker. He could help recruit other positions, I suppose. Yes, that is true. If they get those two kids, they will be done at linebacker. There's no question about it. D-Rock, I wish I could put this up. D-Rock had the need for Sneed. I love that. That's great. Okay. Let's get to some of these other questions here. Coleman says, I'm kind of surprised Sneed did not commit on the visit. Look, we talked about this last week or the other day when we talked about the kids that are on campus this weekend. That's not Notre Dame's MO. Notre Dame does not push kids to commit on campus. And if anything, there have been kids that have tried to commit in the last year especially, but there's kids now that have said, hey, I want to commit. And Notre Dame's like, go home, talk it over with your family, talk it over with your coach, make sure that this is definitely what you want to do. And that's the way you need to do it. I'd rather lose a kid who never committed than lose a kid who committed, then realize it's not what he wanted to do. So I had no expectations of Jalen Sneed publicly committing on his visit. Okay. I'm not sure how much stronger I can continue to say that. Notre Dame does not push for kids to make public commitments during their visits. Okay. Let's see here. Lashy says, I grew up in Hawaii and I always love when they recruit and there are other recruits with Pacific Island backgrounds. I hear Junior Tuihalamaka and it reminds me of home. I would imagine so. I mean, and who was the last linebacker that looked like him from out there? It was a guy named Manti, ended up being a pretty good football player. Coleman Smith in South Carolina got some players. Y'all people sleep on our players down here. I don't think so. I think Notre Dame fans appreciate South Carolina, Coleman. You're a little young. We've talked a little bit. You're a little young, but the last quarterback to win a national championship at Notre Dame was from South Carolina. From that moment till the next time Notre Dame played for a national championship in 2012 with a quarterback from South Carolina. So trust me, Notre Dame fans like kids from South Carolina. They just don't get many of them, and that's been the thing. So let's see here. But, yeah, there's some talent in South Carolina, and I like the fact that Notre Dame was willing to go into the backyard of the SEC and go get a guy. Let's see if I know the linebacker questions. Hey, Bob 157 says, I don't think there's a position that you can feel better about for the 2022 class of linebacker. It's certainly right now, I still think D end is the better position because they have 3 guys compared to 2. And I think there's a lot of high upside talent there. But as soon as Notre Dame adds a 3rd and potentially a 4th linebacker in this class, then I think that the linebacker class will surpass it. Now, if Anthony Lucas signs with Notre Dame, then you've got, or Cyrus Moss, then you've got a legitimate battle for which position is better. But I think that's a battle that Marcus Freeman would love to have. Which position is better, D-line or linebacker? That's a place where you want to be. No questions. John A1 asks, Rivals had Ziegler listed as an athlete. What are the positions? Does he have the skill set to play at the Power 5 level? That's why I hate the whole athlete thing. He's not an athlete. He's a football player. So find a position, I think he's a safety or a rover, but I think most people are projecting him as a rover, outside linebacker type of guy. Perhaps there's a chance that you try to get him to be a safety at first, but I mean, look, if he shows up less than 220 pounds, you want to give him a shot at safety? Go for it. Nolan's probably a red shirt kind of guy anyway. He's the one guy from this class at linebacker that I definitely think is a red shirt candidate because, number one, the depth of position above him, but 2, he's the one that has sort of the most body work to go to get there. And he's just, to me, he's a kid that could utilize a red shirt, where some of these other guys show up and they're already kind of ready to go. So if you want to give him a shot during his redshirt year or fall camp, those kind of things to see if he can stick at safety, go for it. I mean, I'm fine with that. But they're recruiting him to play rover is the position their name is recruiting him to play. But if they change that and want to give him a shot at safety, especially depending on how the safety class fills out, which we'll get to here in a little bit, and I think that's kind of where you want to see it. So I just wish they would explain it. Hey, here's where he's going to play. Matt D brings up sort of 2023. He says, thanks. That's like Sonny Styles in the 2023 class. He's a safety now, but no way does a 6'5", 260-pound kid play safety at the college level. He's a rover, and I tend to agree with that. And Sid Irish says, Kyle Hamilton is a 6'4", 219, not much difference. Here's the difference. Kyle Hamilton, 6'4", 219 pounds as a college junior. Sonny Styles is 6'5", 215, 220 pounds as a high school sophomore, rising high school junior. Nolan Ziegler is a rising high school senior at that size. Kyle Hamilton was not 219 pounds when he was a junior in high school. He was much smaller than that. Those guys have pretty different body types than Kyle had, so that they will certainly easily outgrow that. Brendan Burtis says, do you think Sonny Styles could grow out of rover as well? Maybe he turns into a viper like Cyrus Moss. Look, I'm not putting anything past Cyrus Moss. Past Sonny Styles. Nothing. I could sit there and say, nope, he can't play that because he's a safety now and all that other kind of stuff. But look, I don't know how his body's going to turn out. I saw him this summer or this spring at the Columbus event. He's massive. if you'd have asked me in February, could he play, grow into a defensive end? No, I don't think so. I think he's a linebacker. I think the reason that you want to keep him a linebacker is because at linebacker, he's going to be able to play. He's going to have more range. He's going to be able to make more plays. You can get him in space. You can take advantage of his size and his athleticism. But if he keeps growing, and that's a place where you can say, hey, look, we're going to turn you into a guy that can get 13 sacks, then you do that. But I would like to see him stay at the linebacker position, whether it be Rover, whether it be Will, whether it be Mike, somewhere along those lines. I'd rather see that. And that's going to be a discussion that we can have. There's a chance that Notre Dame could have a 2023 linebacker class that's just as good as this one, if not a little bit better. So we'll certainly have some questions to discuss there. Let's see if we have any more linebacker questions. Michael Morris says, I think Prince Collie is the best linebacker we've got since Jalen Smith. Where do you think he fits in all this? We talked a little bit about that. I think Prince is also a rover will kind of player. We got a super chat down here from Presley Laypath. Presley, thank you so much for joining the show tonight. Thank you so much for the super chat. We appreciate that support. I appreciate that very, very much. So, hey, real quick, Sean, are you ready to go? You ready to go? Okay. So Sean is with us. Sean is done producing for the night, and he's ready to talk some linebackers. So we just wrapped up a little bit of linebacker talk, Sean. We have not moved on to the Rovers yet, so we're going to get through a few more questions. Okay. And then before we do, I want to get your opinion on what you think of a couple of these linebackers. Okay. So we're going to talk about that before we get to safety. Sure. But what's that?
Says sure.
Sounds good.
No problem.
Let's see if we can get some more linebacker questions here before we move on. I don't want to miss these guys. Here's Matt D has a comment that I really think is important. I am stoked with the way Freeman isn't afraid to go after kids like Sneed and Tuihalamaka. Burnham and Ziegler, also huge kids. Stealing a Michigan fan is awesome. But that's the thing is, you look at this linebacker class. It wasn't one of those lucky years where there happened to be two kids in Indiana, like Jalen Smith from Fort Wayne, where you had a much better shot than you would have if Jalen Smith was from Atlanta or Dallas or LA. It would have been a lot tougher to get him. I'm not saying they wouldn't have got him. I'm just saying it would have been tougher. You had to go up into Michigan. One kid, Nolan Ziegler, you were going to get. I mean, like literally anyone could have got Nolan Ziegler. He grew up a Notre Dame fan. I have a picture that his dad sent me of Nolan as a baby at a Notre Dame tailgate back in 2004 with Chris Zorich. All right. He was coming to Notre Dame. And as soon as Notre Dame got involved, that was going to happen. Josh Burnham's the opposite. Josh Burnham grew up a Michigan fan from everything I've been told. They had to sell him on what made Notre Dame special. You go out to L.A., basically out to the L.A. area, and you had to get Junior Tuihalamaka. You got to go down to South Carolina, a place that Notre Dame does not get a lot of commits. They got Troy Pride, Chris Brown, Everett Golson. It hasn't been many. You can count them on one and a half hands. That's impressive. And again, these are highly recruited players. I don't care about rankings. I really don't. I care about heavily recruited players that have the talent to be difference makers, and Notre Dame didn't shy away from them. There's no question about it. Matt D talking about, see here, we got a couple more down here. Really appreciate this, guys. Let's go. All right. So he says Xavier Bradshaw coming on official visit on June 25th, 27th. I have not seen that yet. I'm going to go to Twitter here and see that. If that is true, you're going to make me a very happy guy. It's about the only way we could stop talking about linebackers is going to be that right there. So we'll look into that. We'll see if that is happening. That would be a tremendous thing for Notre Dame if they were able to get him on campus. So we'll see about that. But Jordan, even if that's not true, I appreciate the super chat, buddy, very, 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 very much. Brandon with the super chat. I appreciate that, Brandon. He also has a question. Do you foresee the Cheeks visit getting canceled? I think it's this weekend, and if it's canceled, I think that could possibly be a sign that Sneed is all Irish. I don't know if that visit's going to get canceled. Sean, I don't know if you have any insight on that, but I mean, I could see them still going through with it until guys go public, but I'm just telling you, I'm trying to say this as best I can is I think Notre Dame is in a great position. Notre Dame has zeroed in on two linebackers. If Sebastian Cheeks makes the visit, great. If he doesn't make the visit, I won't be surprised. I don't have any intel that he is or isn't going to come, but I think Notre Dame knows who they want at linebacker. I think Notre Dame feels really good about where they stand with the two publicly uncommitted players. I don't know how much more I can say this. All right. So that's obviously where he goes. I'm trying to not laugh at some of these comments you guys are making about somebody that I happen to know. Let's get to a few more questions before we move on to safety, because I do want to talk about safety, because this is a very interesting very interesting safety class. So let's get back to some questions here. I want to make sure I don't miss anything. Christopher DeCant asked about Jalen Smith type of player. Sean, this is something I wanted to ask you about. Let's talk about Jalen Sneed.
No, this is something I want to ask you about. This is funny. Go ahead.
Okay, go. So you had mentioned something earlier about this kind of conversation. So let's dive into that right now.
You watch the film and you see him attacking very much. If you watch the film of Jalen Smith when he was in high school, you see him attacking from all over the field, specifically from the outside. And I remember a conversation I had with you early on, and you told me before the move was even made, you said, I think they should put him at middle linebacker on the inside. It would protect him more and give him more opportunity to make plays.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that really interesting. So as I'm watching Jalen Sneed's film, in my mind, I'm picturing this because I see him coming off the edges, making plays. And I'm saying to myself, as athletic as this kid is, do we move him to the inside? Knowing when you have someone like Prince Collie already in the fold that is in the inside, do you put those two on the inside and let them make plays? Or do you let one stay in the middle and then put Sneed on the outside and just give him the same movement? I guess an athlete like that, you also want somebody outside, kind of like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah,
mm-hmm.
that can make plays in space.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if he's going to come in and be a rover, but I'm just saying, he has that skill set to where it seems like he's athletic enough to make those plays in space. So that was my conundrum as I watched his film. What is Marcus Freeman going? What's in Marcus Freeman's mind as he's watching the same film? What is he saying? What's the aha thing? What's the light bulb that's going off to say, oh my God, I can use this kid like this?
Well, I think the first thing, Sean, is with him and Prince Collie is there is no one position that you have to play them.
Yeah.
And that's what we were talking about before you were able to join us. And I know you're producing a show tonight, so you didn't get a chance to listen. But one of the things I talked about with Jalen Sneed is I can see him playing 4 different positions. So I can see him playing rover. I can see him growing into a Mike. Now, he'd have to fill out another 20 pounds to play Mike.
Yeah.
15, 20 pounds. But I can see him there because he's got that power, that explode. I mean, how do you block him when he's getting downhill that quickly? And then I could see him playing Will. I can also see him being a guy, and you saw it on the film, Sean, where you put him on the edge on 3rd down and say, good luck.
Right.
I would have loved it if they would have done more like that with Jalen Smith. We talked about that all the time back in the day where how did you only line up Jalen Smith in one spot his whole career?
Right.
As far as Brian Van Gorder. Now, what I prefer, just my opinion, I actually prefer the Jalen Smith sort of path to inside for both Prince and Jalen and Nolan Ziegler. So to me, of those 3 players, one of them has to stay outside.
Right.
One of them has to stay at rover. You could potentially see 2 of them stay at rover, but I think, it depends on how the depth chart's going to shake out. If you're feeling really good about where you are inside, then you may leave those guys outside and have kind of a 1-2 punch there. But with me, remember, Jalen started as a true freshman as sort of that Bob Diaco's outside linebacker to the field. He played a lot in the slot, played a lot to the field, made plays in space, and then they moved him to will linebacker. We saw that with Drew Tranquil. We saw that with Osmar Bilal. We saw that with with other players, and I think Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah could have done that if they didn't already have other inside linebackers and if he wasn't so dang good in space. And that's the rub. That's kind of the thing that you're talking about, Sean, is you could have moved Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah inside, but why?
Yeah.
Because he's so good in space.
Right.
And I think they're going to have to make that decision possibly with one of those 2 players, Prince Collie and Jalen Sneed. I personally would like to see Jalen Sneed more as the inside guy. Or excuse me, as the inside guy, yes. Because when I look at it, I want Jalen Sneed as close to the ball as possible. That's ultimately what it comes down to for me. And because he does bring that unique pass rushing ability to the table, where as good as Prince is, I think Prince is more of a space guy than Jalen is. Jalen can play in space, but I want him attacking the football. I want him rushing off the edge. I want him blitzing. I want him doing the Jalen Smith stuff. So when Christopher DeCant says he a Jalen Smith type of player, well, look, I would never put that kind of burden on anybody. I mean, because Jalen Smith was a generational player before the injuries. I mean, think about it. he was a guy that blew his knee out to the point where normal human beings are never playing sports again.
Yeah.
He was able to develop into a Pro Bowl linebacker that got a huge contract a couple years ago. He's to me, he's the kind of kid that you put him in medical books and say, yeah, this kind of thing doesn't happen. You had to reconstruct his entire knee. He didn't have all of his feeling in his feet for like a year and a half.
Right.
And they developed. That's how freaky athletically Jalen Smith was. Him losing 3 steps means he's still a very athletic NFL caliber linebacker. I haven't seen a linebacker like him since then, coming out of high school. Having said that, do I see Jalen Sneed as a Jalen Smith type of player from the standpoint of him being a 5-star recruit, top 5 overall player? No. Do I see him being a Jalen Smith type of player in regards to how he could be used in the Notre Dame defense? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because he does have that explosiveness, that burst, as those instincts where, Jalen could have played in space. We saw him do it as a freshman. But you want him closer to the ball. You want him impacting the run game. And it comes down to this. Would you rather have Jalen Sneed impacting the pass game, or would you rather have Jalen Sneed impacting the ball? And for me, I want him impacting the ball, whereas I feel a lot more comfortable with Prince Colley, based on what we've seen on film, being more of that space guy. So if it came down to me officially, and it was my decision, and Marcus Freeman said, Driscoll, I can't decide, man. Right. These guys are both so good. Where do you think this should go? I said, Coach, I'd leave Prince Colley at Rover, and I'd put Jalen closer to the ball. Right? That's what I would do. Whether that means Josh Burnham's the mic or Junior Tuihalamaka's the mic or whatever the case may be, that's what I would do. And that's what but I also think from there, I'm not just lining him up at will, Sean.
No.
He's going to be rushing off the edge. He's going to be doing all types of things. There's things you can do where you can put him out in space. And that's the thing is if you have him and Prince Colley on the field together, maybe you mix it up. That's also, to me, here's the other thing too about this, Sean. As more and more teams start going tempo, you can, if your starting lineup is some combination of at Rover Mike, Rover Will, if you have some combination of two of Ziegler, Colley, and Jalen Sneed,
right, you
could get to the point when it takes some time for them to learn both, where you can just play left-right with your linebackers against tempo teams.
And that's so beneficial.
Who else can do that?
Coach, yeah.
And what I mean by that is, so right now, if the ball's on the right hash and you've got the defense's right hash and you're going to have Jalen Sneed as the will, let's say, and he's there on the right hash as the will, and then you've got Prince Colley all the way out to your left as the rover, and they throw a bubble screen to the right, Prince Colley blows it up in the in the backfield, you're now in the left hash, they'd have to flip. Right. But if you feel comfortable, like, hey, look, they both know Rover, they both know Will, and we're going to practice this because we're playing a bunch of tempo teams. Say Prince stays left, and he's now the Will, and Jalen stays right. He's now the or Nolan Ziegler, either one, right?
Yeah.
That kind of athleticism and versatility could make this linebacking core really, really dangerous. And then all of a sudden you say, you know what, this series we're going to have Jalen out at Rover just to mess with teams. Again, you're not doing that with them as freshmen because that's a lot on their plate.
Right.
But as they both get older and maybe Jalen's a junior and Prince is a senior and you could see that, or Nolan, whatever the case may be, or Prince leaves from the NFL and you're doing it with Jalen and Nolan, right? Whatever the case may be. So those are the things that I think about. And it's that excitement you gets going because like, man, you can do so much with these athletes. And that's the thing, Sean, as you talk about Notre Dame struggles to run with people. I think that's been a little overblown for their defense for a few years now.
I would say about 3 years.
At least. Yeah. I think 2017 Notre Dame had some issues where, they were good, but, when you had Niles Morgan and Tavon Coney on the field, you had two pretty good linebackers, but you weren't running like Roquan Smith was running.
No.
You know what I mean?
Right.
They were still good football players. Drew Tranquil, Tavon Coney, a little closer because Drew's a better athlete than the other two. Then you get to the point where you got Drew White, you've got Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, you've got Osmar Bilal. Athletically, you're getting there. Maybe not always instinctively. Now you look at it and you're talking about Josh Burnham and Nolan Ziegler and Prince Colley and Jalen Sneed, and you're like, I mean, and then 2023, you're looking at Drake Bowen, you're looking at Sonny Styles, you're thinking, man, Notre Dame's front seven can run with anybody.
Yep.
And that's the thing we're seeing. And it started, in the last couple of years, but we're really seeing it with this 2022 class at linebacker, which is what to me is making it so special.
Well, I think that the change that Notre Dame made, Mike Elko started the linebacker position for me, which highlights the strength of Clark Lee, or one of the strengths of Clark Lee, was teaching that linebacker position. Because I thought the linebacker position at Notre Dame definitely took a step forward under Clark Lee.
Big time.
Big time.
Big time.
And he almost called his defense to funnel things to his linebackers.
Especially in 2018.
Yes.
I mean, everything in 2018 was geared towards push everything back inside. Corners, rover, safeties, funnel everything back into Drew and Tavon.
Yeah.
Everything. Even the defensive ends, it wasn't spill to the safeties. It was force it back inside.
Yeah.
Let those two guys clean it up.
And that's where you saw the difference. You remember those, I think it was like a game and a half, maybe 2 games where Drew hurt his ankle. I think definitely you saw it at the Northwestern game.
Yeah.
Where Drew was hurt and he played.
But he didn't start.
Yeah.
He came in later.
Yeah.
But
you saw the difference. I think Drew White, was it Drew White that acquitted himself well against Navy?
Yes. And Prince Collie, Jordan Markeith was the one that started against Northwestern at that position.
Right.
And he was a little bit more up and down. But yeah, Drew White came off the bench and replaced Drew during that game and played really well.
Yeah.
But I think not having Drew Tranquil, though, in the second half, when Navy started moving the ball.
Because they made adjustments. Then you had no one to counter that. Yeah.
Yeah, because Drew White's a good player. He's not Drew Tranquil. And he definitely wasn't then.
Yeah. That first half, they dominated. They dominated Navy in that first half.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was the game that was out in San Diego, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. I was at that game, by the way. It was exciting for me because you know what else happened on that field about 23 years ago, right?
Here we go.
I'm just saying, when Brett Favre caught that L because the greatest of all time beat him, number 7, the Magnificent 7. I'm just saying. So I'm like, oh, that's where Elway did the helicopter and, all that kind of stuff. I got a little excited.
You were picturing all of that.
Oh, I was fanboying at that day, buddy. You know me. I'm like, hey, I'm doing it. But no. Yeah. I got there on Friday.
Yeah.
And I went to the stadium before the game so I could do that. I was like, oh, this is where John Elway won his first Super Bowl. Yeah, I was doing that. That was me. I was that guy that day.
So I'm interested, definitely, because Clark Lee was so instrumental in these linebackers in their development and taking the next step forward.
Yeah. Now you have a system that's going to turn them loose, Sean.
Yes.
That's the thing. Clark laid that foundation. Now you get to turn them loose.
What we talked about earlier with the defensive backs, you don't have that issue with the linebacker position because they have game action under their belt.
Yeah.
Your linebackers. So now, what are they going to be asked to do now?
Yeah.
I think under Clark Lee, they were probably, maybe I'm wrong. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Under Clark Lee, or maybe I won't characterize it correctly. Under Clark Lee, they were asked to be a little bit more cerebral.
Yes.
Than they probably will be under Marcus Freeman.
Yeah. He's going to turn them loose.
They're not smart kids.
Yeah. It's not about intelligence. It's about, at some point in time, you just got to let them go.
Play. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're going to see more of that under Marcus Freeman. A couple more comments, a question before we move on to safety. Matt D says, I remember how excited everyone was when Manti committed. I wasn't excited. I was shocked. I was more like, Did he just say Notre Dame? Did he just put a Notre Dame hat on? Yeah, it took me a couple seconds to realize he actually said. I was waiting on him to throw it down and be like, just kidding, I'm going to USC.
Yeah.
But that was then Jalen Smith came along. And he left out, Matt D left out Jeremiah Wusu-Koramoah, the 3 because the only program in the last decade with 3 Butkus Award winners, there's only one. It's Notre Dame.
Yep.
Maybe one of these young men will be our next big time LB. We shall see. And then Sid Irish says that Sneed and Collie both have future Butkus Award talent. I think he's leaving people out. I think Josh Burnham has Butkus Award. I think Josh Burnham, to me, I still say this. Josh Burnham still is the best linebacker I think Notre Dame would have in this class, even if Jalen Sneed committed to Notre Dame. I still think Josh Burnham might number one.
Watching his film when he committed, I went back to like an Andy Katzenmoyer type.
I think he's way more athletic, but he's a box guy.
At that time, you thought like, yo, this Katzenmoyer kid is crazy athletic. And this linebacker class, the next 2, I can see coming in and making an immediate impact.
Yeah. But the one difference in Katzenmoyer and Josh Burnham?
Yeah. So true. So true.
Yeah.
One was strictly just
A freak athlete and not a real.
Yeah.
You better give them pretty simple instructions.
Yeah. Yeah. So look, what are you more excited about the next 4 years on the field and recruiting wise combination? Are you more excited about the back end or the linebacker position?
Linebackers. Well, if you can tell me that Marcus Freeman is going to still be here in 4 years, I'm still more, because I think they're going to improve in the secondary, but I think this can become a regular thing. This just recruiting elite linebackers can become a regular thing.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of that, because then that's all of a sudden is you end up, one's a Rover, one's a Mike, one's a Will, one grows into a Viper, right? And one may even grow into a strong side end, depending on how the body fills out. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I just think linebackers are kind of the modern day running backs. You know, you used to recruit running backs. You'd recruit like 9. Lou Holtz recruit like 9 high school running backs. 2 would stay at running back, couple move to receiver, couple move to moves to safety, one moves to linebacker, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I see the linebackers as defense. You know, one can maybe be a safety, one can be a Rover, one can be a Mike, one can be a Sam, one can be a Will, one grows into a Viper. You know, Chris Zorich came to Notre Dame as a linebacker.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So those are the things I look at and see. And Ronald says, "Hey, Coach, thanks for the clips. That made it crystal clear for me. Very much appreciated, because we watched a little bit of film before you got here, Sean." Notre Dame 2164. How much upside do you think Jalen Sneed has? I think Jalen Sneed has All-American talent. I think Jalen Sneed has All-American upside. I think that Josh Burnham has All-American upside. I think if Nolan Ziegler was if Notre Dame was in a conference, I think Nolan Ziegler has, and Junior Tuihalamaka are, you know, first, second team All-American type talents, in my opinion. I think those other two, I think Burnham and Sneed have, I mean, they're 5-star top end ceiling players. There's no question about it. I mean, they're as good as any linebacker Notre Dame has signed, in my opinion. If they get them, right, they would, to me, be in that top discussion for the top 3 or 4 linebackers to join Notre Dame since Jalen Smith. So obviously Jalen's Manti, then Jalen, right? But since that time, just where they were as high school players, you know, Jalen's in that conversation. Josh Burnham's in that conversation. You know, I liked Jeremiah Wusu-Koromoa a lot, but these guys are both more advanced than Jeremiah because they're so much bigger than he was.
Jeremiah had to be in the weight room for like 2 seasons.
Jeremiah is as big now as Josh Burnham and Jalen Sneed are now.
Right.
You know, but you look at Prince Collie is in that conversation for me. Jack Lamb was in that conversation for me. Shane Simon was in that conversation for me. These guys are absolutely going to be in that conversation for the best linebacker talent, recruits to sign with Notre Dame. And we're not even talking about Junior Tuihalamaka yet.
Yeah.
You know, who to me, I like Junior a ton. I don't think Junior has the same elite first-round NFL draft pick ceiling. Now, I think he's more of a day 2 guy at his max, second, third round pick kind of guy, like Manti was.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of how I kind of see it.
What are the chances that? Oh man. Who would jump out and be the Asmar Bilal this year?
In regards to the breakout guy, or
yes, the breakout guy for this linebacker.
I know who Vince thinks it is. Vince thinks it's going to be Bo Bauer.
Really?
Yeah, he thinks Bo's going to end up beating
out
Drew White. Yeah, I think it's. I mean, to me, the best candidate for that Shane Simon, because the reason I say Shane Simon is because when I think of Asmar Bilal, I think of a guy that I thought had no chance to be a productive player,
right,
to a really good football player.
Yeah.
And if Bo Bauer breaks out, I mean, it doesn't shock anybody. And the only thing that surprised me is he beat out Drew White, but it could also be Drew gets hurt and Bo steps in and plays well. I fully anticipate Jack Kaiser stepping up and being a really good football player. I mean, that's just natural growth and progression from a guy that I think is a heck of a football player.
But the flashes we saw, yes.
With Shane Simon, he just was not good last year. I mean, he was worse than Asmar was in 2018.
Wow. That's saying something.
But I think the talent never left him. He didn't just stop being an athletic, talented kid. And I think he, more than any linebacker, is going to flourish under Marcus Freeman of just saying, hey, man, just attack. Stop thinking so dang much. Stop let's not make this, let's not make this so complicated that this becomes, how we're showing everybody how smart we are as coaches. Let's let these kids go play.
Right.
And I think he has that philosophy. So I definitely think Shane Simon could be that kind of player. But then you look at that class, that Jack Lamb, to me, the best linebacker class, top to bottom, that Notre Dame has signed and under Brian Kelly was that 2018 class. It was the Jack Lamb, who was a top 100 recruit, It was Shane Simon who was a top 100 recruit, Bo Bauer was a top 250 recruit, and then Ovia Gofu. We're all part of that class. This class would be better, in my opinion, if they get all four of those guys. If they get Jalen Sneed and Junior Tuihalamaka with those two guys, I think this would be the best linebacker. I mean, there's no Jalen Smith in this class, but there's, 3 top 100 guys, and Nolan Ziegler could end up being a top 100 guy, in my opinion. Let's see if we have some questions. In Mike D, I'm going to get to your question in Mike D here in a second. I want to finish these linebacker ones here real quick. Richard Robinson says, hey, Brian, love the show. Great linebacker class already. Think Sneed could be a tackling machine in Freeman's D. Have my fingers crossed. RG Government, hey, thanks for the great. I enjoy every show. Thank you very much. Coleman Smith says, thoughts on Sebastian Cheeks? Are we out with him? I think we are done recruiting him, but just want to confirm. I don't know if I'd say that they're done recruiting him. I think that's a little bit bolder than I'm comfortable saying right now, but I'll just go back to saying what I said in the earlier show, Sean, and what I said earlier in this show. I think Notre Dame knows who the 2 linebackers they want are. Yeah. And that's who they're focusing their attention on. It's about that's the only way I'm comfortable saying that right now.
We talked about, I mentioned it earlier today. He's an individual that wants to be loved. If he really wanted Notre Dame, he could have committed.
He had his chance.
He had his chance to commit. Yeah. And at this point, it's almost like the girl that tells you it's not you, it's me. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the way he's kind of that's the way I pick up on it. It seems like he has that type of relationship with Notre Dame right now where, I like you, but I don't know. I just can't seem to commit.
You're good looking and all, and you're nice, but I'm really looking for that. I'm really looking for that, that model type, that little extra pizzazz.
Right.
I'm saying this without getting in too much trouble. All righty. All right, here we go. Let's get to last couple of things. So here's the question that was asked. And Mike D asked, Coach, what do you think of the recent hype for Amarian Walker? Thank you, and God bless you all for the hard work you put in. Go Irish. Thank you, Mike, for asking this question. I don't want to carry too much about it because we're getting now an hour and 42 in, and we haven't got to the safeties yet. So I do want to get to the safeties. But the thing I would say to you, Mike, is number one, listen to the show we did earlier. Fast forward to the question. Well, listen to it all. But if you want to talk about Amarian, get to that. We did talk about that at length today.
Yeah.
As far as what I make all the recent hype, most of it doesn't mean a thing to me. I don't care about 441. I don't care about Michigan offers. I don't care about any camps or anything like that. The only thing that gave me pause is the fact that Alabama offered him as a DB. It's not even that he ran a 441 at their camp. It's that Alabama offered him as a DB because that's still Nick Saban's baby. You're not offering a kid a DB if Nick Saban doesn't give the go ahead.
Right.
That's the one thing that gave me pause. And we explained why in the earlier show, so I don't want to rehash it too much, but that tells me okay, maybe he's showing something athletically that I haven't seen on film yet. Now, does it change my opinion? Not one bit. Because as I said, I got to see it on film. But let's just say I'm going to be paying a little bit more attention to that early Amarian Walker film than maybe I otherwise would have as a DB.
Yep.
Now, I would have always paid a close attention to his film, Sean. I'm going to watch because I want to be wrong about him. I just hope you all hear me. I hope to the Lord above that I'm wrong about Amarian Walker. But as of right now, I can't change my mind just because I want to be wrong. The film tells me what it tells me. I was always going to pay attention to it, but now I'm going to be paying attention. Sometimes I'll watch some of the defensive clips, but I don't really think about it I always watch the defensive clips, but it's always with the thought of how does it translate to receiver?
Yeah.
But I'm going to be looking at it a little bit differently now that Nick Saban looked at him as a DB. That's going to tell me a little bit of something. So that's the one thing I am looking for with him. But as far as a full evaluation of it, Mike, I would encourage you to go watch that earlier show that we talked about him. But I hope that at least gives you a little bit of a taste of what I see. Anything you like to add, Sean, before we move on to the safeties?
No, you said it perfectly.
Here's one question that I want. This is what I want the rest of the conversation in the chats while Sean and I are talking about safeties. This is what I want the debate to be. David Knight says, I've been wanting to ask you this. Who did you like better, Stonebreaker or Bolcar? That's an easy one for me.
Don't do this to me, Sid Irish.
I know it's going to be harder for you, Sean, but for me, it's easy.
Oh, man.
It's Stonebreaker. Number one, higher ceiling. Bolcar was a little bit more steady. Stonebreaker was the more flashy guy, the more productive guy, but also he had the better name. I mean, Michael Stonebreaker. I mean, how much of a better 1980s linebacker name can you have?
You forget
his name should have been like,
yeah,
Stud McTackles or something. I mean, it's about the only other name that you could have had that would have been better than Michael Stonebreaker.
That's like asking me which one of my kids do I love the most. That's so cruel. But I agree with you.
Yeah.
You go back and you look at some of the old games, especially the game I always reference is you watch the first half against Miami and you watch the plays that Stonebreaker made, the interception return for a touchdown right before the half to tie it up. You would probably have to go with Michael Stonebreaker. He just it seems like he made more big plays. But that was a combination.
Yeah, there's no question about it. Yep, there's no question about it. So let's get into some safety film. So, Sean, this is a very interesting position, and we're not going to watch film of all these guys. We're going to talk about each player, but there is one player that I definitely want us to watch film of.
Okay.
And that's Xavier Nwankpa. We said going all the way back to May when we started looking at the visits, Xavier Nwankpa, number one safety on the board. To me, he'd be the second best safety to sign with Notre Dame during the Brian Kelly tenure, which is saying because I like Jalen Elliott. There's been a lot of good safeties, talented safeties to sign, but he, to me, would be the number. Houston Griffith's part of that conversation. Derek Allen, who I liked a lot, is part of that conversation. To me, Xavier would be the number two safety to sign with Notre Dame, behind, obviously, Kyle Hamilton. That's how high I am with him. But here's the problem. Ohio State is his leader. They've been his leader for a while. The reported leader. This is what the recruiting analysts and those type of people said. I don't know that Xavier's ever said that. That's what the recruiting analysts have said. But I've talked to sources that Notre Dame knew that Ohio State was the team. And we said Notre Dame and other teams have to do everything possible to make sure that Ohio State was smart to get Xavier as his first visit.
Yeah.
The hope being that you can convince him to commit and not take the other visits. The hope for Notre Dame was if you can get him out of that visit without a commit, even if it's a silent commitment where he's still going to take visits, I don't care. As long as you can get him on campus and it's going to be this weekend, this was the one that's the one you had to try to you're winning by just not losing, right? Like just getting him not to commit is a win. Now Notre Dame gets their shot. And he's going to be on campus this weekend. And to me, he is a kid, Sean, that I look at and I say, this is the kind of kid that can be, there's two guys on defense that I see right now that are the final pieces to making this a truly elite, game-changing, gap-closing type of defensive class.
Okay.
It's number one. Everybody knows my number one. It's Anthony Lucas. That he is the guy, right? But my number two guy is Xavier Nwankpa. I mean, he is that next level. You get him, you now feel like you have Kyle Hamilton's replacement. And I know that's a lot of pressure on the kid, but that's, to me, how good he can be. I'm not saying he's going to be Kyle Hamilton, but he gives you that, wow, you got one of the best in the game, one of the best players in the country to do that. I mean, he's in the conversation to be the best safety in his class.
Okay.
And he's a special player, and we're going to watch his film, and I'm curious to see what everybody else thinks, because I think this kid is a to me, as a safety, a gap eraser, not just a gap closer. He's a gap eraser. I think this is a kid that has all the physical and instinctive traits that you want. So let's watch a little bit of Xavier Nwankpa's film. Now, he's from Iowa, so you don't often see that kind of player from Iowa. But this kid, to me, this is a special player. So we're going to watch some film of him on defense. Let me get this. They don't need to look at our faces. We can just focus on the kid. All right, let's get back to that. Let's start it over here. That's one of those gimme highlights. Like, so that's not even like, okay, you didn't really do anything on that one now. That was the other guy. So what you're going to see here from Xavier is you're going to see a guy with an exceptional range. Okay, so I want you to watch this play. So Xavier is right here on the hash, okay? As you watch this play develop, he's inside the hash when this ball breaks, and he gets outside and undercuts that route. That's like Kyle Hamilton type of range there. Like, that is special range. This kid gets his hands on a lot of footballs. Very rangy, covers a ton of ground, in my opinion, really gets downhill in a hurry. This is an interesting play because the beginning of this play is not a highlight of Xavier. You can watch him get a little bit grabby here. It's him right there. I believe it's him right there. Gets a little grabby, but watch him come up and just lay the boom on this kid. Just lays that kid out. But I love his range. I love his instincts. I love it. You see his foot quickness there. This isn't a super impressive play, but what I like, Sean, is just how nimble he is on his feet, loose he is on his feet. I really like that. And the thing about him, too, is you watch him, his footwork is not great. It's just he's got great foot quickness. As his technique gets cleaned up and he starts playing with a little bit better footwork, you're going to see a kid that's gonna be a really, really impressive football player. Oh, come on, Xavier. You got to make that catch. It's a good open field tackle. Very rangy. Again, got to improve his angles. See that right there, though, Sean? Watch him flip his hips. Watch how fluid he is. He just opens up and takes off running. It's a really impressive athlete. Angle's not great, but I like the agility. I like the hips. Covers a lot of ground. This kid's a really, really good football player. Yeah. Feel free to enter in any thoughts you have so far about him.
The anticipation reminds me very much of Kyle Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
Just anticipating where the ball is going, anticipating routes. You see that in him. I love
Look at that close right there, Sean. Yeah. Look at that close. Look how far he is away from this tight end.
Go back to that right there. That play right, that's a bait job. Look at him.
Yep. And look at him turn on the gear.
Yeah, he just turned it on. That's a bait job.
And he has to slow down at the end to catch the ball because the ball was underthrown. He had to actually slow down and jump.
Yeah.
But you can't bait a guy if you can't cover ground like that.
Exactly.
I could try to bait someone like that. I'm still getting beat because the reason I say that is if you like right now, if it's a lesser athlete, that gap right there never gets closed. He closes that gap before the ball gets there.
Yeah.
That's range.
That's like when you're running the corners in track, you make up the stagger.
Mm-hmm.
This kid makes up the stagger. He makes up the yardage. Nice.
Mm-hmm.
What are his measurables?
He's listed at 6'2", about 190, 195.
Yeah, he looks about 6'2".
Mm-hmm. He's a low tackler. That's the other thing, too, is in space, he goes low, which I like. That's another play. Look at the range there. It just he gets his hands on so many footballs. That's the thing that impresses me. And seen a couple game films, too, and it's just I feel like every time the ball's ever thrown his direction is actually on his highlight tape because there's just so few times that they actually throw the football at him. Here he is on offense. You're going to get to see some of the athleticism. And he's not an offensive player, but you see the foot quickness. You see the gear. Look at that. It looked like they might actually had a shot at him there for a second.
Wow.
Right? You look at here. It doesn't necessarily look like this is going to be a home run. And then all of a sudden, he just runs away from everybody.
So is he a come down in the box?
I think he's a do it all. I mean,
I was just about to ask you, could you line him up over Michael Mayer? Well, just say a tight end,
right?
Maybe Michael Mayer, and just say defend this guy.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I don't know how many safeties you can do that. I think Kyle Hamilton would have some issues with doing that against Michael Mayer just because he's so strong. But yeah, I mean, he's a guy you can say, go cover the tight end. He's a guy that I think you can say, play center field. He's a guy that I think you can say, hey, play the alley, jump the end cuts, jump the intermediate stuff, go downhill, tackle people. I think he can do it all. Look at that jump cut right there. Here's at running back. Look at that, Sean. That's the kind of foot quickness I keep talking about. Like, watch this jump. He jumps back 2 gaps, and then as soon as he hits the ground, he's running again. Like, he's a really impressive athlete.
I think Lance Taylor likes that part right there.
Mm-hmm. Here he's returning punts. Like I said, he get the ball on the outside hand. Other than that, I mean, to me, Sean, he's a kid that has all the traits you want.
I think what we see when you see these type of kids and the work you do with film, continuously pointing out to people the strengths of a kid like this, it continues to point to what Marcus Freeman has talked about, the plan that he has for this defense, the multiple ways he wants to attack. You talked about it. He might come out with 3 safeties on the field.
Mm-hmm.
You never know how he's going to use the safeties on the back end in his defense. He might slide a safety down into that rover position for a certain look, especially against teams that are going up tempo.
Mm-hmm.
Spread it out a little bit more. So when you have talented guys like that, and you continue to bring volume into the room at each position, as you called for earlier today, you give the toys to the master that can go ahead and just make them all work together.
Yeah.
You know? And so what we're going to be watching, it's almost like what we saw offensively under Lou Holtz, we might watch under Marcus Freeman, like the multiplicity. Like literally you could have Ricky Waters in the backfield, right? Where Rocket is split in, and then the very next play, you could have Ricky Waters that split in with Rocket in the backfield.
But this is the thing, though, Sean. This is the kind of kid that you have to close on, though.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? This is the kind of kid you have to
get. In order to do that, yes.
Right.
Yes.
And this is a kid. Who's your competition? It's Texas A&M, right? But more importantly, it's Ohio State, right? That's what we were talking about in the earlier show.
Yes.
These are the battles you have to start winning against Ohio State, right? And especially, it would be especially impressive because, number one, it would say a little something about Chris O'Leary in his first year as a safeties coach. It would also say something about the entire defensive staff, but it would also say, hey, look, we're a player for the top players. I mean, we don't care if we're fourth and we got to come back. We don't care if we're second. We got to beat Ohio State. We don't care. As long as the kid gets on our campus, we think we have a shot. And this is what we said when we said in May, and it's still true now. If I had to make a prediction today, I'd predict Ohio State. Right? I'm not going to blow smoke up people's you-know-whats. That's not what we do. We're going to be honest with you, okay? Yeah. I'm not going to say things, and I'm not saying anybody else does this at the Notre Dame beat. I'm not saying that, but I do know that people that cover recruiting for other schools will do this. It's, they got a great shot at this guy because they want people really interested in the weekend, which means you're going to read our stuff, which means you're going to read our post game and all that. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be honest with you. But here's what I've always said: you got to get him on campus, and if you do, you got a puncher's chance, and that's all you can ask for. You got to have that puncher's chance. And now I feel like there's a staff in place, whether it's Freeman, whether it's Elston, whether it's Mickens, whether it's O'Leary, whether it's Brian Kelly being more involved. You've got the infrastructure. I mean, the kid's going to sit down with Kyle Hamilton. How many safeties is Xavier Nwankpa going to meet that he's got to look up to? And I don't mean look up to like as a role model. I mean literally look up to. And staff, and say this is a big safety, and he's the best in the country, and he plays at Notre Dame, and he has very good grades. And he goes to class, and he's still a baller.
Yeah.
Right? Like, hey, man, Kyle Hamilton say, look, I go to class, I get good grades, I'm taking a real major, and I'm also the best safety. I mean, Kyle would never say that because he's too humble, but you get the point that I'm making, right? Man, don't listen to all that noise, man. You come here, they're going to coach you up, they're going to play you all over, they're going to let you go make plays, they're going to do this, they're going to do that, and look, the reason I wanted to talk about the safety position the same day as the linebackers, it's what you and I were talking about in an earlier show, and that's why I wanted to get you back on tonight. Because what we said was, when we talked about corner, is if you're Xavier Nwankpa and you start seeing Ohio State and they're going to have great front seven, they're going to have great skill players, is Notre Dame going to be that way? But then you look at it and say, okay, they already got Tyson Ford. They've already got Aiden Guevara, who's blowing up. They got Darren Nagu, who's blowing up. They've already got Josh Burnham, who's a top-ranked player. They got Nolan Ziegler. If they get Jalen Sneed and Junior Tuihalamaka, I'm gonna be playing behind the best front seven in this class at that point in time.
Yeah.
Then if they get they have Donovan Heinrich, then they get Anthony Lucas. I mean, that can be the kind of thing that says, you know what, I was torn on these two schools, but they're doing something special over there.
Special, yeah.
And that's where all that stuff matters. And that's why, if they're able to get Tuihalamaka and Sneed, it doesn't just impact the linebacker position.
No.
It's going to impact other positions. And this is why we wanted to talk about safety, because that's the kind of kid that can get it. Now you're going to have your puncher's chance this weekend. Now it's up to the staff to finish off the comeback.
Yeah.
There is one other safety whose film I want to watch before we wrap up with questions and wrap it up for tonight, Sean. And I appreciate you staying late at the studio to join us. So I really appreciate that. But let's watch a little bit of what's that?
My pleasure. My pleasure.
It's a lot of talking today. Definitely a lot of talking. Let's watch a little Jake Pope film.
Okay.
Jake Pope obviously visited Notre Dame this weekend. People asking me what I thought of him, and I want to get your opinion, Sean. I really like Jake Pope. I do. I'm going to take this down because we're actually good there. I think this kid can really play. He's a receiver here, but I think this kid is really, really athletic. And even though he's got to get a little bit stronger, I think he'll hit you now. But this kid's from Buford, Georgia. This kid can run. Oh,
same place as Darius Walker, huh?
That's right. Yep. I'm a big fan. So I want to get your opinion. He's number, I believe, 14, plays some receiver and plays some safety.
Nice.
He's playing receiver here.
Nice.
But I think this kid's a really, really athletic player. Somebody said the other day, and somebody, I can't remember who it was, but somebody compared him to Glenn Earl.
Okay.
Because remember, Glenn was a really good two-way high school player too.
Right. Well, I was just about to say the one thing that bodes well. You see how well he ran that post route?
Mm-hmm.
He ran it very well.
He understands what receivers are trying to do.
Yes. So that bodes well.
Yeah. But I think this kid is a top-notch athlete. The only question I have, I've seen people listen to 6'1". He does not look 6'1" to me. I could be wrong, but he just doesn't look 6'1" to me. But he's still, I don't care, 5'11". Some of the best safeties in the NFL are 5'10", 5'11".
You better believe it.
How big's Tyrann Mathieu? He's not a real big guy.
I think Brian Dawkins was like, what, 5'11"?
Yeah. Bob Sanders was 5'9". Troy Polamalu was 5'10". But that right there, that's the play right there.
He slipped.
Oh, and then, of course, he ruins it with the slip at the end. But that play right there, Sean, that's some unique athleticism right there.
Yeah, yeah.
This cut right here, bam.
Just to have the vision to see that coming.
Yep. And then the turf monster got him. But that to me was a really impressive level of athleticism from Jake Pope. And again, he a 3-star recruit. No, I don't care. I don't care about stars. Kid can play. But you just watch what he does offensively. That's where you really see the athleticism shine offensively. But I see that kind of foot quickness. I see that kind of speed, that kind of instincts playing safety. Right. He's not going to bite on those routes because he knows it's coming.
He knows it's coming. Yep. Way to fight through that block.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really like this kid. And he's going to fill out, but he strikes. He's got to get lower there. That's the thing. Technically speaking, he's got to get a little bit lower there. I want to see him get a little bit lower, but watch the strike, Sean. I mean, he's going to stick his nose in there, and he's not a real big kid. But look, him and that running back meet in the hole, and they don't go towards the goal line.
No.
In the way that they're reacting, that was the game. I mean, they're not doing this because it was a 4th and 1 stop and there's still 2 quarters left. They're doing this because this is the ball game. And watch this play. I mean, he's patient, right? Reads it, and then bam, stands the guy up by himself.
Yeah,
that's a big-time football play right there.
Burnham might get in if he doesn't step up.
There's no question.
Yeah.
There's no question. He's a unique player, very talented player. Look at this closing speed. And see, here's the thing about this play. This was the play I wanted to point to. I was watching earlier. There's 2 things that you see here that are to me really stand out. Number one is that downhill burst, that first downhill burst. That's impressive. But to be able to redirect outside like it's nothing, that's rare athleticism to me, Sean. Yeah, you may disagree or not, but that's you don't see that a lot.
Most people just deaccelerate or stop.
Right.
They have to change direction. He didn't either. It seemed like it was just a smooth transition.
Yeah, his ball skills are pretty good too.
Again. Yeah.
Another guy that I compare him to is like he to me strikes me as a more athletic version of Jalen Elliott.
I like that.
I think that to me would probably be my favorite comp for Jake Pope is because, again, two-way player. Jalen was actually more of an offensive player in high school than he was a defensive player. I think they're very similar body types. About 6 foot, not real big, but nice frames. But when I see Jake Pope, I think Jake Pope's a more not better athlete, maybe more explosive version of Jalen Elliott. This might be a better way of saying that.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I see Jake Pope. And if you give me a more explosive version of Jalen Elliott, I will take that every single day of the week and 3 times on Saturday. So that's Jake Pope. I'm gonna watch the last couple clips.
I would really love to have this kid at wide receiver.
Yeah. Don't tempt him. But, but during his visit, he did spend some time with the Notre Dame staff. They have talked to him about possibly playing both ways at the next level. So they're definitely selling that on him. But he's the kind of kid, to your point, though, Sean, in all seriousness, he's the kind of thing where it's like JoJo Johnson. He protects you if you strike out, if there's injuries in another position.
Mm-hmm.
I think this kid can play. And I think this kid could play in the slot, too. I think as a defensive player. I think he's the kind of kid, Sean, that you could come down and say, okay, we're going to protect you with a safety because we want you to be aggressive. but you don't see the foot quickness and the hips to say this kid could go play the slot.
Absolutely.
Kind of be that number 3 safety in your starting lineup as well. Like, look at that agility. I mean, this kid can ball. I don't see how people have him ranked as a 3-star recruit. I don't know what you're watching at that point in time if this kid's a 3-star recruit. So that's Jake Pope from Buford, Georgia. Dad played at Clemson, so he's got the DNA. He's got that. There's no question about it. So that's the 2 safeties I wanted to talk about tonight. We'll talk more about KJ Winston next week before his visit.
Okay.
So I wanted to get into more safeties tonight, but we're already 2 hours in, and I really wanted to kind of be able to answer some questions. But those 2 safeties to me are the ones that I wanted to watch first and foremost. And we've seen film of Jaden Bellamy, who's supposed to visit this weekend from New Jersey. He's a kid that the staff is recruiting at corner, but I think if I've tried to reach out to a few sources, and it sounds to me like if they fill up at corner, that they would easily say, hey, we still want you. We just want you somewhere else now. We want you as a safety now.
Yeah.
So he's a guy whose film we've watched in the past. So he's another player that's on the board, but it's a small safety board. It's Xavier Nwankpa, Jake Pope, KJ Winston, and potentially Jaden Bellamy. That's it. That's the safety board, which tells me a few things. Number one, they feel like they have a shot to get at least one of those guys, maybe 2. What it also tells me is there's some corners on the roster that if they do well at corner in 2022, could be playing that safety position as well.
Yeah.
That's what those 2 things tell me.
Yeah.
So there's confidence somewhere, and it could be a couple somewheres. But if there wasn't confidence in there, Sean, they'd be expanding the board.
I agree.
And they're not.
I agree. You know what? But we're thinking traditional safeties, right?
Mm-hmm.
But once again, this goes to the flexibility of what Marcus Freeman wants to do, and it possibly plays into your recruitment. Traditional safeties, let's go get 2 that we want. And then what we have, we can make hybrid guys that can play cornerback, safety, different positions, different alignments, and we go from there. So, yeah, they know what to do with what they have.
Yeah.
That's encouraging to me as a coaching staff.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. So let's get to some questions here, Sean, before we wrap up. And again, I appreciate you joining us tonight. It sometimes, just talking to myself can get a little bit monotonous. All right. So Brandon says, hopefully Branch, that's Zion Branch from Bishop Gorman, committed sooner rather than later. And he's talking about commits to Ohio State.
Yeah.
Ohio State wants Nwankpa at Bullet. I think he wants to play pure safety. Notre Dame needs to pitch him as Hamilton's replacement. I absolutely agree with that. I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, you mentioned that. Yeah.
Yeah. And they've already got Kai Stokes committed at safety as well.
Yeah.
Who's the kid I really like from Florida? He's from is he from Armwood? I think he's from Armwood Sefner. But he's a really good football player too. He committed to Ohio State, which is surprising because he was looking at like Duke and Northwestern and Vanderbilt, and then Notre Dame offered and Alabama offered and Ohio State offered, and like within a week he was committed to Ohio State, which surprised me for a kid that had that kind of academic situation. Okay. Here's Shinji. Harold Perkins is the best linebacker for 2022, and he's a linebacker from Texas who, if you have not seen him, is very good. There's 2 other linebackers. If you like linebackers, there's 2 other linebackers that are being talked about in this chat that I would encourage you to watch their film. Harold Perkins is one, and Sean Murphy's the other. Sean Murphy's a very good football player. I'm not a big C.J. Hicks fan, the kid from Ohio. I'm not as big of a C.J. Hicks fan. He's a good player. I just don't think he's what they're making him out to be, at least my opinion. Yeah. He says, is the best LB for 2022, but Sneed and Burnham are up there with anyone else in the class. Those 2 plus Collie could be an incredible group of linebackers for Notre Dame. Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. No question about it. All right, so we had to boot an Alabama fan because, we get real respectful fans of other teams come in here all the time. Earlier today we had one, but I've yet to meet an Alabama fan that's come with any level of anything but buffoonery.
Right.
So we had to boot him out. All right, here we go. Brandon says the ball's definitely Notre Dame's court now with Nwankpa coming in this weekend. I think they'll blow him away. I heard they have big plans for him this weekend. They're gonna put everything into that one. I mean, there's like I said, there's 2 defensive recruitments that are so important to this, and they're not the only ones. I mean, the corner Benjamin Morrison's an important one, the 2 linebackers, but to me, the long play ones that are vitally important here are Nwankpa and Anthony Davis. See, that's what happens when you try to talk recruiting in the middle of basketball. So even the Lakers are out. Anthony Lucas. So let's see here. Thomas Walsh's Bob Crable was his favorite linebacker all time. That's a little bit before my time.
That's what, 70s?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Bob Crable.
Yeah. Early 80s. Early 80s.
The early 80s?
Yeah, like late 70s. He was drafted in 81 or 82. And actually, he's the last Notre Dame linebacker to be picked in the first round. Can you believe that?
That's a little bit of trivia.
Yeah.
I did not know.
Manti was second round. Jalen would have been picked in the first round if it wasn't for the injury.
Definitely.
But, but still. Sid Iris says, I want Lucas and Nwankpa over all others. Smart man. Smart man. I almost booted William Alford from the chat, Sean. So the greatest of all time wears number 15, not number 7, Patrick Mahomes. Oh, you're hurting me, William. He's got a long way to go, but I'll say this.
That's some AFC West.
Patrick Mahomes is the closest thing I've ever seen to John Elway in regards to just the combination of athleticism, arm talent, having it up here, toughness, being able to put a team kind of on his shoulders. But I'll say this. If you'd have put John Elway in this era with the receivers that Patrick Mahomes has been able to throw to, I'm just telling you, John Elway was a special dude. John Elway is the closest thing I've ever seen to a one-man show in football that could actually consistently get a team to the Super Bowl.
I don't think I laugh because the narrative, of course, everyone's supposed GOAT is number 12, right? So I really had not seen him do anything spectacular, in my opinion.
Except just win.
Until the comeback against because I didn't think he came back in the fourth quarter against the Seahawks, but Pete Carroll blew that game.
You talking about the Falcon one?
Yeah. No, I'm saying the Seattle one he won.
Yeah.
With the interception on the goal line. I mean, Seattle just gave that one to him. He didn't deserve that one. That's my.
I don't normally criticize play calling, but that's not the play call there.
Yeah, that's not the play call. The Falcons one was the one where I was like, okay, that right there is impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's impressive. But I mean,
that to me was as much as the Falcons choking as it was.
The difference between those two, you can talk about Super Bowl wins and everything.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way 12 is walking into any organization and immediately changing the tide of that organization like 7. The moment he walked in Denver, they automatically became a playoff team.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen.
Mm-mm.
That just doesn't happen. And if you want to go watch a drive, and I know
I was watching that the other night.
That 98-yard drive, I watched it as
90 and a half, baby.
There's no as a teenager, I'm a young kid. I wasn't a teenager yet. I'm sitting there saying to myself, they have no shot.
Mm-hmm.
No shot. Dog pound right behind them. And this kid just makes plays. Because he was a kid. He was still a kid growing up in the league. But I agree with you.
Yeah.
15 is pretty good though, bro.
Yeah. Yeah, no question. No question. Here we go. Let's get some last question. I mean, anytime you want to talk about John Elway, I want to wrap the show up soon. You start talking about John Elway, I'm just going to not have to be able to wrap the show up anytime soon. So, like, y'all can all leave, but I'm just going to talk to myself about John Elway for the next couple of hours. So that's my guy. See here, a couple questions about following up on receiver. Some people are excited about the news that Xavier Bradshaw. I've done some further digging on this. This has been first reported by Mike Singer at Blue and Gold Illustrated. Is the first person I believe to report this. I could be wrong on that, but that's what people are telling me. So he's the one saying that they are looking to get him in that weekend. That would be, if they could get him in and actually take him, that would be phenomenal. Matt D says if Dell gets Merriweather and or Williams and Bradshaw, he'll be doing great. Hey, look, we said this last week. If Dell Alexander wants to get me off his back, bring in that class right there, right? And then coach up the kids you have this season.
Yeah.
Look, Sean, you and I have talked about Dell off the record.
Yes.
I hope that Dell proves me wrong this season because he's a good dude. You know, I like Dell Alexander personally. I think he's a good guy, good coach. I've never heard a bad word about him, but look, the proof is in the pudding, right? I mean, it is what it is. But he's got an opportunity to change. And this is why I said at the beginning, people like fire Dell. I said, you don't need to fire Dell. What you need to do is you need to sit down and say, Dell, these are the expectations. We know you're capable of it. That's why we brought you here. Now go get it done.
Go get it done.
And hopefully he's doing that.
And maybe like players with other coaches coming in that are taking it to the next level, maybe they raise his level of production, as a coach as well.
Yep,
Being surrounded
absolutely.
by other good coaches. So
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Christopher DeCant says Dell needs to close. Amen. Amen. Let's see if we can get some last questions here. All right, let's find some. Here we go. Coleman Smith says if we get Xavier and Pope, that would be good to go. That would be good to go with Mickey, Morrison, and Moore at corner. Look, if Notre Dame got Xavier Nwankpa and Jake Pope, the two safeties we just watched, with Jaden Mickey and Benjamin Morrison and Devin Moore, I don't know if you could. I would love to get like a Kamari Rogers, right? Like a no-brainer, surefire top corner.
Right.
That would be the better scenario, right? But I love the potential and upside of Jaden Mickey, Benjamin Morrison, and Devin Moore. And again, it's like what we talked about in an earlier show when we broke down the cornerback the current cornerback depth chart. You've got three guys. You only need one of them to pan out and be a stud, a second one to pan out to be a good player.
Right.
And then you got the four from last year. Again, you're going to sign 7 corners in 2 years. 3 of them have positional flexibility. So it gives you more protection to say, look, some of them are going to have to step up and be good. Sid Irish throwing out the serious comps. The Nwankpa equals Ed Reedish in regards to how much he gets his hands on a ball.
Wow.
That's saying a lot because Ed Reed might be the best safety I've ever seen. And that's saying something because there's been some really good safeties in the last 20 years, some really good safeties. But to me, he's definitely in that conversation, Sean, for me. And Coleman Smith says it here too, not to mention Moore could also play safety, and that's the key. Moore could, Riley could, Chance Tucker could, Ryan Barnes could. No question about it. No question about it. Yeah, people doubling down on the Ed Reed stuff. I love it. People are fired up about Xavier Nwankpa. Let's see here.
They should be excited about that.
Yeah.
Kid.
Yeah.
The film you
no question.
Just showed they definitely should be excited.
Yeah. Matthew Lass says, I know it's not directed towards me, but hey, you can answer it as well, buddy. Anytime Notre Dame gets a kid on campus, they have a shot. I think Xavier has legit interest in Notre Dame, and Notre Dame has a better shot than people think. I've said it all along, Matthew. I agree with you. If they could get him on campus, then they're going to have a puncher's chance. Because the only reason he's visiting campus is because he has legit interest. And there was a time long ago that Notre Dame was considered maybe sort of that team to beat really early on. So I think there's definite interest. But I think the point that Matthew made there, Sean, is when Notre Dame can get a kid on campus, all bets are off.
All bets are off.
Especially now with the type of defensive staff that they've put together, in my opinion.
Sorry about that.
It's all good. It's all good. So let's see if we have any has Nwankpa ever been to Notre Dame? I believe he had visited as a sophomore for a game. I believe, but not like a full. Again, when these kids are visiting as freshmen and sophomores for games, they're not getting the kind of attention that they're going to get now. They're just there to see the campus and maybe take a tour, go to the game, and go home. That's how those work. Sid Irish, I loved Glenn Earl and Jerome Sapp because we were talking earlier about the Jake Pope comparison in regards to Glenn Earl, who is an Illinois guy. Let's see here. And Mike D says, feels like we are so close to being an elite program with all the moves Notre Dame is making. Feel like we are a QB away from being a truly dominant program for years to come. I think they're going to have a really good quarterback in 2021. I'm much higher on Jack Cohn than most people are. Yeah. And then, of course, they've got, I love Drew Pine. And, if Tyler Buckner pans out as the player he's capable of being, then they're no longer a quarterback away. That won't be the reason they're not successful. I think looking forward, I really feel like if Tommy Rees is the coach I hope he is and think he can be, I think you've got enough talent at quarterback. And if you can just do well in 2023, that you're going to be in good shape there. Coleman Smith says, I know he's a corner, but any word on Nakai Martinez? We talked about this, Coleman, at the beginning of today's show, the 1:00 show. Notre Dame has canceled Nakai's visit this weekend. He will not be visiting Notre Dame this weekend. Notre Dame likes where they're at with their secondary board. And just kind of leave it at that one. All right, let's just wrap up. A lot of comments. Don't see a whole lot of questions here. To wrap up, to say anything. Here we go. All right, OP Dragon 19, Sean. Here's one for you. Jimmy Friday, best name and number. He was 13, right? Jimmy Friday was number 13.
13, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. He was a good player. That was back. They had I can't remember who else was in that class, but I remember him coming into Notre Dame with a really good linebacker class. Yeah. Really good linebacker class. Sid Irish, Jeff Burris, all-time favorite safety. I've actually gotten to know Jeff Burris a little bit over the years, which is kind of one of the perks of doing this job. Really good guy. I had to joke with him a little bit. He had chances to pick off Charlie Ward like 3 times in 1993 and dropped all of them. It's like, oh, come on, man. All righty. Ronald says, here we go. I want Nwankpa and Pope, to be honest. Yeah, I think that's the dream scenario for Notre Dame at safety. I think there's no question about it. All right, so that is going to do it for tonight's show. So, Sean, thank you so much for joining us. Did you have any other comments you wanted to make about the linebackers and kind of what you saw? We talked a little bit about Jalen Sneed, Josh Burnham, any of those guys. Feel free to kind of any sharing of your thoughts that you've seen from watching those guys.
Jalen Sneed was the one that I was really focused on. Like I said, the sky's the limit for that kid.
Yeah,
it really is.
Yeah.
We both love Prince Colley, so we that's all. Put that to the side. But Jalen Sneed is just a kid that, as I said before, I watched the film. Sort of similar. I got some of the same feelings I got when I was watching Jaden Smith in high school, and I was just wondering, how are we going to use this kid? Where do we see him? Where can we foreshadow him playing and predict where they might use him moving forward? But I want to encourage everyone to really, really understand how good of a place this program is in.
Yeah.
I know people want the next step. They want to go ahead and make it to the championship game and, bring a title back to the program. It's been since 1988, and we're there.
Yeah. The foundation is there.
We're there.
Now, because again, the next step 10 years ago was like a running start, pole vaulting your way to hopefully being in contention.
Yeah.
They're there. They're close. And the recruits we're talking about tonight, the Josh Burnhams, the Jalen Sneeds, the Xavier Nwankpas, the Anthony Lucases, those are those final step guys, right? Those are those, well, you get that guy, and now your defense can play with anybody, right? To go the guys in the class. Offensively, the Tobias Merriweather's that kind of guy, right? That's why we talk about the 2023 quarterback. So it's we talk about Dallin Hayden. That's why we talk about Xavier Bradshaw. They're this close, and that's why you and I have been kind of harder on Coach Kelly in recent years, because they are close. But that's the thing that excites me right now about where the program is at, because we are seeing Brian Kelly so much more involved. We're seeing him do the things, the fight that he got into to get Marcus Freeman here. Fight meaning just, hey, guy wants to go to LSU, or LSU's offering him more money. You know what? We're going to come back and we're going to do more, because this is the guy we want. This is the guy we need to get. And I just think that was big. So now it's that step up time. Let Tommy Reese do this. They're close, Sean, and that's the exciting thing. I don't think the gap is what people. It's not 30-3. It's not 31-14. The gap is a lot closer. And there's a couple spots talent wise that got to get better. And this 2022 class could give them those players. That's what's so exciting.
I totally agree. If we clear up those spots and we get those gap closers, man, the future is bright. I'm talking about the near future is bright.
Yep. Liam Burke asked about Sean about Justin Walters, thoughts on Walters moving forward. Justin Walters. Liam, I would encourage you. We did a safety breakdown. Was it yesterday? Recently? Like we broke down the safety position. I would encourage you to go check that out. We dove into Justin Walters a little bit. I like Justin Walters. He's an Illinois guy, Sean.
Yep.
He's actually a little bit further along than I thought he would be, considering he get a chance to play his senior year. So, yeah, him and Kerry G are two really good safeties. Now it's about you need a 22 and then 23 to restock the depth chart after a couple down years from a numbers and impact standpoint, because you're also going to lose. I mean, this is your last Notre Dame fans, whether it's 13 games or 14 games, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Enjoy these next 13 or 14 games with Kyle Hamilton.
Please do, because he's gone. He's definitely gone. And I think Justin Walters is going to shock a lot of people. And the reason he's further along, I think the conference he played in is very underrated.
Yeah.
It's very.
I think he would have been a guy that would have saw his ranking go up a lot if he'd have been able to play as a senior.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. And that's why I thought he'd be a little further behind at Notre Dame, Sean, to be honest with you, because he didn't get to play as a senior.
No.
So when he kept flashing on the practice videos and then he goes up and he picks a pass off in the spring game, you're like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe he didn't need that senior year.
Right.
You know what I mean? He's ready to go.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I agree with you, Liam. I think Justin Walters is and him and Kerry G, and they're two different types of players, too. Justin is an alley player. I mean, he is a cover the alley, run the alley, and he's 180 pounds, but he plays bigger than that.
Yep.
You know, he's a strong kid. And so he's a guy that we really like. But for a much more in-depth preview, definitely check out that safety podcast we did the other day. We talked about him a lot. You're gonna Sean's high on him, I'm high on him, and Vince is high on him as well. So we'll get a chance to check that out. So, but Omar also says, "Great show today, guys. Welcome to the fam, Sean." So you've got the hat. You've now on your third show. I mean, you're now officially a member of the Irish Breakdown family, Sean.
Oh, I appreciate.
So what they don't know is you've been a listener for a long time,
and
that's how you and I connected.
Yeah,
is through that, and then obviously you've had me on your. I appreciate you having me on your show again, but I'm glad we're finally able to make this happen. But I did warn people that it may be harder to get you on during football season. So enjoy Sean during the summer. We're going to try. Because I keep giving you got to have Sean on more. You got to have Sean on more. Well, what about Vince? Yeah, Vince too. Vince. So am I the one you don't want on anymore? But tomorrow that may come true because I may have jury duty tomorrow. We'll see how I'm feeling in the morning and how things are going when I get down there. But Sean and Vince right now are gonna have tomorrow's podcast at 1:00. Now, if I'm able to get out of jury duty by 1:00, then I'm gonna join them. But we're gonna see Sean and Vince handling tomorrow's show. They got to still figure out what they're going to talk about, but they're going to be they're going to be on the show tomorrow. So, Sean, we're really excited to have you as part of our Irish Breakdown family, buddy. I really appreciate it a lot.
Honored to be a part of the family.
Yeah, and you got your Irish Breakdown gear. Matt D says order your Irish Breakdown gear. Christopher can't ID, baby.
Yep.
Down in the description area below, you can see the merch store. My wife built that site for me. We got all the stuff up there. I got my gear. Sean's got some gear. We got some more on the way for Vince and I and Sean. So we're excited about it. But if you have gear, what's that, Sean?
Great last minute Father's Day gifts.
No question. No question. If you have received your Irish Breakdown gear, what I would love to see you do is to put it on Twitter, put it on social, share it. I want to see it. I want to see that you're happy about it. Thomas Walsh sent me a picture. Matt D sent me a picture. I've had a couple other people. Somebody, is it Mick? A guy named Mick sent me a picture today, which was awesome, of him and rocking his Gap Closer shirt, which is great.
Nice.
Tag me on Twitter at Coach D178. So put your picture on. JP Scott, who writes for Irish Breakdown, does some NFL stuff. His new Twitter bio is him rocking the Irish Breakdown hat. So put it on Twitter. I'd love to see it, and then that's going to help other people see how awesome the gear is and how much fun we're having in this community, this Irish Breakdown community, which grows every day. So anyway, hit the like button, subscribe, notification bell before you leave. Check it out, irishbreakdown.com. Below, you can see the link to our free newsletter every day. You'll get all of our articles. Obviously, you want to check out our podcast every day as well. So for Sean Davis, I'm Brian Driscoll. Actually, it's for Sean Davis. I'm Brian Driscoll. Thanks for staying up with us tonight. Everybody have a great rest of your night. Hug your family, love your family, and we will see you again tomorrow.
Go Irish.